The cake struck before I saw Tessa move. Fondant crushed against my nose and lips. Sweet vanilla filled my mouth, followed by the sharp taste of metal. Something punched into my left cheek and stayed there. For half a second, all I heard was laughter bouncing beneath the glass roof of the conservatory. Tessa kept her hand against my face as if she were posing me for a photograph. "Relax," she said, laughing into the microphone clipped to her dress. "It's just a joke." I shoved her arm away and wiped the frosting from my eyes. My palm came back streaked with red. The laughter thinned into scattered gasps, but the cameras did not stop recording. Before I tell you what happened next, I hope you're doing well. Stay with me to see how one wedding prank exposed my family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the rest of the story. 9 months later, I could still remember the exact order in which people reacted. My 16-year-old niece, Avery, covered her mouth. My brother Colin stepped toward me, then stopped when our mother raised one hand. Miles, Tessa's new husband, looked past the blood on my face and toward the content crew near the flower wall. My mother looked at a camera first. Only after she saw the red recording light did Diane Ward look at me. "Oh, Jocelyn," she said, as though I had spilled wine on myself. "Don't make a scene." I pressed 2 fingers below the wound. The skin around it felt hot and tight. A hard point moved beneath the frosting when I touched my cheek. "Tessa," I said, keeping my voice level. "Do not touch me again." Her smile flickered. Not because I was bleeding, because I had said it loudly enough for the microphone to catch. She lifted both hands. "I barely touched you. The decoration must have scratched you." A venue employee hurried over with a stack of cocktail napkins. I stopped him before he pressed them against my face. "Please call medical assistance," I said, "and get your event manager. I need all security footage and staff logs preserved from this room, the cake staging area, and the hallway outside it." The employee blinked. He had probably expected tears or screaming, not a preservation request. Diane reached for my elbow. "Come with me to the bridal suite. We'll clean you up and change your dress." I stepped away from her. "No. We need to get that blood off you. I need a doctor to see it before anyone cleans it." Her lips tightened. "You are not turning your sister's wedding into a police matter." I asked for medical help. You know what I mean. I did know. My mother had spent my entire life translating harm into inconvenience. If Tessa broke something, we were told accidents happened. If she humiliated someone, they were accused of lacking humor. If I objected, Diane said I was jealous of how easily people loved my sister. But I had not come to the wedding because my mother wanted a family photograph. That morning, Avery had texted me while I was getting dressed. "Please come. I don't want to be alone with them all day." I had stared at the message for a long moment before answering that I was already on my way. Avery had been 11 when her mother died, and 13 when Colin began relying on our parents for nearly everything he could not manage alone. School pickups, meals, appointments. The constant practical work that follows grief long after people stop bringing casseroles. Diane used that help as proof that she had earned access to every private corner of Avery's life. 2 weeks before the wedding, I had found a teaser on Tessa's business page. It showed blurred family photographs, a teenage girl sitting on the edge of a bed, and Tessa's voice promising a story about a young woman learning to turn grief into strength. The girl's face was hidden, but I recognized Avery's gray sweatshirt and the narrow silver bracelet her mother had given her. Avery admitted Tessa had filmed her during a panic attack at my parents' house. She said Tessa had promised the recording was only for the family to understand what had happened. I had saved screenshots of the teaser in 3 places. I had arranged to speak with Tessa privately after the ceremony. If she refused to delete the footage, an attorney I had already consulted would send a formal demand the following Monday. I came prepared. I drove myself. I did not drink. I declined the general media release presented at check-in. I kept my phone in my hand and sat near an exit. I sent my friend Maya the venue address and the time I expected to leave. My mistake was believing preparation would let me control the damage. At the cake table, Avery's breathing changed. I recognized the shallow rhythm immediately. Her shoulders rose too high, and her eyes fixed on the blood dripping from my jaw. "Colin," I said, "take her outside, somewhere without cameras." He glanced between me and Tessa. "Can we not do this here?" "I'm not discussing anything. Your daughter needs air." Avery gripped the edge of a chair. I lowered my voice and gave her the same instructions I used with frightened children at work. Look at me, Avery. Put both feet on the floor. Press your heels down. Tell me 3 things you can see that aren't white. Her eyes moved from my face to the room. Your dress, she whispered. The green exit sign. Uncle Colin's tie. Good. Go outside with your dad. Colin finally put an arm around her and led her toward the garden doors. Before they reached them, Kendra Shaw stepped sideways into their path. She was Tessa's maid of honor, dressed in pale blue with a headset tucked behind her hair. For 2 or 3 seconds, she looked toward the camera operator instead of Avery. Then she noticed the blood and moved so quickly she almost tripped over her dress. That hesitation mattered later. At the time, I only registered that she had been positioned to keep people inside the frame. Walter, my father, came close enough to speak without being overheard by most of the guests. I know a doctor in town, he said. He could look at it quietly. I'm going to the emergency room. That will create a record. I looked at him. Yes. He lowered his voice. You don't need to decide anything while you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm injured. The distinction seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have. Across the table, Tessa dabbed frosting from her own wrist, while Miles spoke to one of the camera operators. Did you get the reaction? He asked. The operator's face changed when he realized I had heard. Miles turned toward me. I meant the whole moment, for documentation. Then document this, I said. No one deletes anything. Tessa gave a short laugh. You always have to make everything sound sinister. Blood had reached the neckline of the cream-colored dress my mother had insisted I wear. 3 days earlier, Diane had called and said dark green would ruin the visual balance of the family photographs. Standing there under the bright camera lights, I understood why she had cared. A paramedic arrived with the venue manager. I answered questions, gave my name, and refused to let Diane speak for me. The paramedic checked my vision, asked whether I felt dizzy, and warned me not to pull at the object beneath the skin. The venue manager brought me a clean paper bag. I photographed the napkins, the fallen piece of flower decoration, the table, the floor, and the cameras before placing anything inside. I wrote the time on the bag and my initials across the fold. I knew the items I collected would not carry the same weight as something removed and sealed by a hospital. They were only supporting evidence. Still, I was not leaving them for someone else to throw away. Diane watched me take the photographs. This is vindictive, she said. No, this is a record. Tessa stepped closer, but stopped when I looked at her. I said I was sorry, she said. You said it was a joke. It was. You're the one making it something else. A new wave of pain moved through my cheek, hot and electric. My knees weakened for a moment, and the paramedic caught my arm. That was the part my family later left out when they said I had marched from the wedding with a plan to destroy my sister. I did not march anywhere. I was shaking, nauseated, and trying not to touch the side of my face. Strength did not mean I stopped hurting. It meant I made the next decision while I hurt. Maya arrived before the ambulance left. She had driven from White Plains after seeing my missed call. When she stepped into the conservatory, her expression went from confusion to fury. What happened? She asked. Tessa pushed cake into my face. Something is embedded in my cheek. Maya did not look at my mother for permission. She took the evidence bag, photographed the fold, and stayed beside me while the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance. The emergency room was about 20 minutes away. By the time we arrived, the anesthetic gel the paramedic had applied had barely touched the pain. My cheek throbbed with every heartbeat. The smell of antiseptic replaced the flowers and sugar, but I could still taste frosting at the back of my throat. A doctor tested my vision and facial movement before ordering imaging. Nothing had reached my eye, and no facial bone was broken. I had 2 puncture wounds and a torn section of skin that needed 6 stitches. One small sensory nerve branch had been irritated, which explained the strange numbness spreading toward my upper lip. After local anesthetic took effect, the doctor removed the first object with forceps. It was a pearl-headed corsage pin. The second looked almost identical. A short length of floral wire came out with it, bent at one end. The final piece was a hard strip of black polymer coated in cream and sugar. The doctor did not speculate about who had placed them there or whether they belonged in a cake decoration. He described their size and condition while a nurse labeled each container. Because you reported that another person forced the object into your face, the nurse explained. We're sealing everything separately. We'll document who handles it from here. I watched her place tamper-evident tape across the containers and sign the chain of custody form. Once the stitches were finished and my pain had settled enough for me to think clearly, I called the police non-emergency line. I gave the officer Tessa's name, the venue, the time of the assault, the names of witnesses, and the hospital case number. Maya sat beside me while I spoke. She never interrupted, even when my voice shook. After the call, the nurse set the sealed evidence tray where I could see it before it was transferred. 2 pearl-headed pins, a length of wire, a rigid black support. The flower had not collapsed when Tessa drove it into my face. Someone had made sure it would hold. That was when I stopped asking whether Tessa's joke had gone wrong. I started asking what, exactly, had gone right for her. Maya drove me home a little after 2 in the morning. The local anesthetic had begun to fade, leaving a hot pulse beneath the bandage on my cheek. Every bump in the road sent pressure through my jaw. I kept the hospital discharge folder on my lap and the paper evidence bag between my feet, although the objects removed from my face had already been sealed separately for the police. My instructions were simple. Keep the wound dry. Watch for fever, spreading redness, drainage, or changes in my vision. Return in 7 days for a follow-up and suture removal. The doctor had also warned me that the numbness near my upper lip might last several weeks because one of the pins had irritated a small sensory nerve. Nothing in the paperwork used the word prank. It described 2 puncture wounds, a facial laceration, 6 sutures, and 3 foreign materials removed from beneath the skin. Maya stayed while I changed out of the cream dress. She photographed the bloodstains before folding it into a clean garment bag. The fabric had dried stiff along the neckline. Diane had chosen that color because it photographed well under the conservatory lights. I could not look at it without remembering how quickly she had tried to get it off me. You should sleep, Maya said. I need to download everything first. You have stitches in your face. And my sister has a media team. Maya did not argue again. She opened her laptop while I backed up the photographs from my phone. We saved them to an encrypted folder, an external drive, and the cloud account I had created after finding the teaser that appeared to include Avery. I also downloaded every message that had arrived since I left the wedding. None of them asked whether my eye had been damaged. Diane had sent 12 texts. The first said, "Call me before you make any permanent decisions." The second asked whether I had spoken to the police. By the 6th message, she was no longer pretending concern. You need to tell them it was an accident. Walter left 2 voicemails asking me not to set anything in motion until we could speak as a family. Colin sent 1 message asking whether Avery's name had appeared in my police report. Tessa sent a voice note at 1:37 in the morning. I listened to it once while Maya sat beside me. Joss, I know we were both emotional tonight. I honestly thought you understood it was just a silly wedding thing. I'm sorry the decorations scratched you, but you pushed me hard in front of everyone, and now people are saying you called the police. Can we please not destroy our family over something neither of us meant to happen? She never said she had forced the cake into my face. She never mentioned the pins. She made it sound as though 2 equally upset sisters had collided near a dessert table. Save the original file, I told Maya. She looked at me carefully. You don't have to sound like you're at work right now. I know. You're allowed to be furious. I am furious. My voice came out so flat that neither of us believed it. I took the prescribed pain medication and lay down with an ice pack wrapped in a towel. Sleep arrived in short, shallow stretches. Each time I turned my head, the skin around the stitches pulled tight enough to wake me. At 7 the next morning, my phone began vibrating across the nightstand. Tessa had posted the video. The clip was 48 seconds long. It opened with me pushing her arm away. The moment she approached from behind, grabbed the reinforced flower cluster, and drove it into my face had been removed. The edit showed frosting already covering me while Tessa stumbled backward with both hands raised. Then it cut to me saying, "Do not touch me again." The blood on my hand appeared for less than a second. Music had been added beneath the footage, something soft and wounded. The caption read, "My sister could not let me have one happy day." By the time I opened it, the video had already been shared thousands of times. Tessa posted a second clip from a quiet room at the venue. Her makeup had been repaired, but her eyes were red. She sat beside a vase of white roses and spoke directly to the camera. I have always loved my sister, even when she struggled to be happy for me. I planned a harmless cake prank because I wanted one funny memory between us. Her reaction frightened me, but I'm choosing compassion. I hope one day she can heal whatever makes my happiness hurt her. She did not accuse me of a crime. She did something more effective. She gave strangers a role for me before I had said a word. The comments filled in the rest. Jealous older sister. Professional victim. Bitter single woman. Someone slowed down the edited clip and circled my raised hand as proof that I had intended to strike Tessa. Another person wrote that the blood looked like food coloring. Several people said I had probably injured myself after leaving because I wanted attention. I opened the photographs Maya had taken at the hospital. The swelling had spread toward my eye. The stitches looked black against the torn skin. For several minutes, I drafted a response. I described the foreign objects removed from my cheek. I listed the hospital report number. I attached a photograph of the sealed evidence containers and another of my blood-stained dress. I wanted to show everyone that the wound was real and that Tessa had not simply smeared frosting across my face. Then I called the attorney I had consulted about Avery's video. She answered because I had warned her before the wedding that something might happen with the teaser, although neither of us had expected physical violence. "Do not post the photographs yet," she said after reviewing Tessa's clips. "Save the original files, record the URLs, and let me send preservation notices. You can make one factual statement. Nothing emotional. Nothing about Avery. She has already decided what happened. She has decided what her audience saw. That is not the same as deciding what the evidence will show. I wanted to believe those were the same battle. They were not. By Sunday afternoon, I had signed a representation agreement and paid a $7,500 retainer from my savings. My attorney prepared notices directing the venue, the bakery, Tessa's content company, and every known camera operator to preserve video, photographs, emails, equipment logs, raw audio, and editing files related to the wedding. The venue manager responded first. Because I had requested preservation before leaving, he had already instructed his security contractor not to overwrite the footage. That was the first good decision that felt as though it mattered. Diane responded to my silence by sending me a statement she had written for me. Last night, emotions ran high during an innocent family joke. My sister and I both regret how we reacted. I am recovering from a minor scratch, and we have resolved the misunderstanding privately. Please respect our family's happiness. She had written my recovery, my forgiveness, and my silence without asking me for any of them. Below the statement, she added, "Post this before your employer sees what people are saying." My employer called 20 minutes later. The clinical director at the pediatric therapy practice spoke gently, but she did not waste time. "A parent sent us a video from your sister's wedding," she said. "They're asking whether there was a physical confrontation. I was assaulted and treated in the emergency room." "Were you arrested?" "No." "Were any children involved?" "Not in the physical incident." That answer was true, but incomplete. I hated the pause that followed it. She explained that the clinic was not making a judgment about what had happened. Because I worked with children who had behavioral and emotional challenges, the management team needed to review whether the public controversy could disrupt patient care. I had already been instructed to rest for 4 days. After that, they would let me handle documentation and selected telehealth follow-ups from home. My base salary would continue, but the private evening sessions I provided under a separate contract would be reassigned until the review ended. Those sessions helped cover my rent and savings goals. Losing them for even 2 weeks would cost me several $1,000s. I knew the clinic was trying to protect its patients and its reputation. That did not make the humiliation easier. Tessa had injured me on Saturday night. By Monday morning, I was the one explaining my conduct to my employer. My attorney told me to document every canceled session, every parent complaint, and every management email. She said the income loss might later become part of a civil claim. I created a spreadsheet. That was how I responded when I was frightened. I organized, I labeled, I converted damage into rows and dates because numbers did not change their story when someone cried in front of a camera. I believed that once the full video appeared, the truth would correct everything. That belief was one of my flaws. Evidence could establish what happened, but it could not retrieve every opinion already formed or erase the pleasure some people took in believing the worst version of me. Colin called Monday evening. My face was swollen enough that speaking pulled at the stitches. I answered anyway, because I thought he was finally ready to ask what Tessa had done. Instead, he said, "You need to promise me Avery stays out of this. I have not mentioned her publicly. Mom says your lawyer is demanding all of Tessa's files." My lawyer sent preservation notices. "Whatever it's called, Avery cannot become part of a lawsuit between you and Tessa. This is not a fight between sisters." That is exactly how it looks. I closed the spreadsheet on my laptop. Because Tessa cut the video to make it look that way. I'm not defending the video. You are asking me to protect the person who made it. I'm asking you to protect my daughter. The numbness in my lip had begun to fade, replaced by a prickling burn. I pressed the heel of my hand against my forehead. "Then start doing it," I said. The silence on the line hardened. What is that supposed to mean? It means Avery told me Tessa recorded her during a panic attack. It means she was terrified about being alone at that wedding. It means you keep accepting help from Mom and Tessa without asking what they take in return. I did not know about that recording. You should have known. The words came out before I decided to say them. Colin inhaled sharply. You think you're the only person who notices anything. You walk into a room, identify what everyone is doing wrong, and start assigning corrections. That is not what I'm doing. You sound exactly like you do when you're evaluating one of your patients. Avery is not my patient. No, she's my daughter. Then act like her father. He ended the call. I sat with the phone in my hand, angry enough to call back and explain every reason I was right. I did not call. Being right did not excuse the way I had spoken to him. Colin had failed to ask enough questions, but he had also raised Avery alone for 3 years while carrying debts, grief, and a job that did not pause when his wife died. I had reduced all of that to a single accusation because I was tired of being the one who saw danger first. I still did not apologize that night. Part of me believed apologies weakened the facts. Tessa had taught me to distrust any expression that could be clipped, quoted, or used to move attention away from what had happened. Later, I understood that refusing manipulation did not require becoming unreachable. On Monday night, my attorney forwarded the first responses to the preservation notices. The official wedding videography company listed its equipment and crew. They had used 2 staffed cinema cameras during the ceremony, 1 mobile camera during the reception, and fixed microphones for the speeches. The venue's preliminary inventory showed more equipment than that. 3 compact cameras had been mounted inside the conservatory before the reception. 1 had been placed near the flower wall. Another sat above a service shelf facing the family tables. The third was positioned near the garden exit. The wedding company confirmed none of them belonged to its team. Miles replied through the business attorney representing Tessa's content company. He said Tessa's company had hired a separate content crew to capture informal reaction coverage for short-form wedding material. I opened the floor map attached to the venue manager's email. At first, the camera positions looked scattered. Then I marked where I had been seated. The flower wall camera covered my chair and the cake table. The service shelf camera covered my family's reactions. The garden camera covered the only direct path from the cake table to the nearest exit. They had not been arranged to film the bride walking through the room. They had not been placed to capture the first dance, the band, or the guests arriving. All 3 had been aimed at the space I occupied. In a cached version of Tessa's teaser page, I also noticed a credit beneath one of her older family videos. Edited by Nora Price. The name did not appear on the current wedding crew list. At the time, I saved the page and moved on. I did not yet know why a former editor would matter. I enlarged the venue map until the camera angles formed 3 overlapping triangles around my seat. The wedding had not been covered like a celebration. It had been covered like a scene. 3 days after the wedding, Detective Lena Morales called while I was sitting at my kitchen table with an ice pack against my face. The swelling had turned the skin beneath my left eye yellow and purple. My upper lip still tingled whenever I smiled, so I had stopped trying. On the laptop in front of me, the venue map remained open, 3 camera angles converging around the chair my mother had chosen for me. "We spoke with your sister and her husband this morning," Detective Morales said. I straightened even though she could not see me. At their house? Yes. We asked them to preserve any phones, computers, messages, planning materials, and unused decorations connected to the wedding. Did they agree? They were advised not to destroy anything. It was not the answer I wanted, but it was the answer she could give. I asked whether Tessa had admitted knowing about the pins. Detective Morales paused. Your sister stated that she picked up a piece of cake containing a sugar flower. She said she did not know how the decoration was constructed. And my mother? Your mother was present for part of the conversation. I later read the official summary after my attorney obtained it through the proper process. Diane had appeared less than 10 minutes after the officers arrived. She told them she had come to help Tessa respond to the online harassment surrounding the wedding. According to the report, Diane interrupted several questions, corrected the order in which Tessa described events, and repeatedly referred to the injuries as a bakery accident. The detective had written one sentence in the margin of her notes. Mother attempted to answer questions directed to adult daughter. When Morales called me that morning, she did not tell me what she thought of the interruption. She only asked whether I could come to the station that afternoon for a formal interview. I'll be there, I said. My attorney met me outside the precinct in White Plains. She reminded me that I was there as the complaining witness, not a suspect, but that did not mean every answer would be comfortable. Do not guess, she said. Do not exaggerate. If you do not know, say you do not know. I have nothing to hide. Everyone has context that can be made to look ugly. She was right. Detective Morales and another investigator sat across from me in a small interview room. A camera was mounted high in one corner. Before we began, they explained that the interview would be recorded, and I agreed. I gave them the timeline from the moment I arrived at the venue until Maya drove me home from the hospital. I described the cake striking my face, Tessa holding it there, the blood, the medical response, and my request that the venue preserve its footage. Then Morales asked why I had attended the wedding when messages between Tessa and me showed months of tension. I told her about Avery. I did not describe the panic attack in detail. I explained that Tessa appeared to have recorded a vulnerable medical or emotional episode involving my minor niece and had advertised the footage as part of a commercial project. Did you threaten your sister over that video? The other investigator asked. I told her that if she used it without valid permission, I would involve an attorney. Did you tell her you would destroy her business? No. Morales opened a printed page. You wrote, if you build your career on humiliating people who trust you, eventually someone will make you answer for it. I remembered the message. I had sent it in July after Tessa posted a video of our father falling asleep during a family dinner and added captions implying he had been drunk. That is my message, I said. It could be interpreted as a threat. It could. The full conversation shows what I meant. I handed her the complete export from my phone. I had not selected only the messages that made me look calm. The file included every sharp sentence I had sent Tessa, including one in which I called her work predatory. My attorney had warned me that producing the full thread might give Tessa material to use against me in public. I did it anyway. I wanted the investigators to see the whole relationship, not a cleaned version arranged in my favor. Morales scrolled through several pages. You and your sister did not like each other, she said. I loved her. I did not trust her. Those are different things. Yes, that distinction had taken me 38 years to understand. The interview lasted almost 2 hours. They asked who had access to the cake, whether I had seen anyone carrying pins, whether Kendra had touched the decoration, and whether I knew what company owned the extra cameras. I could answer only part of it. Kendra had carried a small floral supply box during the reception setup. Diane had visited the cake area twice. Tessa had disappeared into the preparation hallway shortly before the cake cutting. Miles had approved the separate content crew. None of those facts proved who altered the flour. When the interview ended, Morales walked us to the lobby. The bakery is cooperating, she said. They use support wire in some decorative pieces. My stomach tightened. So the pins could have come from them? I did not say that. But it is possible. We are checking. Tessa's representative released a statement before I reached home. The message said an unfortunate manufacturing defect had turned a harmless wedding tradition into a painful misunderstanding. It expressed sympathy for my injury, while urging the public not to blame the bride for materials hidden inside a professionally produced cake. The bakery's name was not included, but it did not need to be. Tessa's followers found it within an hour, their review pages filled with accusations. People called the bakery reckless, demanded refunds for future orders, and posted photographs of unrelated cake decorations as proof that the company routinely endangered customers. For the first time since the wedding, someone other than me had been assigned the role of villain. I could have encouraged it. A single post saying I was waiting for the bakery to explain itself would have kept suspicion pointed away from me. I did not post. The owner, a woman named Marisol Vega, called my attorney that evening. Her voice shook hard enough that I could hear it from the other side of the office speaker. "We use food-safe floral wire and some sugar work," she said. "We do not use pearl-headed corsage pins inside anything a guest might bite or press against a face. Those pins were not in the design we delivered." "Can you prove that?" my attorney asked. "I have photographs, material invoices, the sketch." My assistant took pictures at delivery because the bride had already complained twice about the placement. Marisol explained that the central flower cluster had been mounted inside a short, food-safe plastic pick. The pick kept the decorative elements together and allowed the entire cluster to be removed before serving. "The black plastic found in Miss Ward's wound may be part of that pick," she said. "But if it broke into her skin, someone removed it, cut it, or used it in a way it was never designed for." The floral wire was supposed to stay inside the sugar petals. The pearl pins were not part of the structure at all. Marisol agreed to provide the photographs, design sheet, invoices, and delivery confirmation after her business attorney reviewed them. My attorney thanked her and ended the call. I stared at the silent phone. I almost blamed her. I said, "You asked a question. I wanted the answer to be simple. Simple answers are usually the first ones people offer when they need you to stop looking." That night, Kendra sent me a message from a number I did not recognize. I knew there was going to be a prank. I did not know she changed the flower. I read it twice before replying. "Do not delete anything else. Get your own lawyer." She called immediately. Kendra was crying so hard that I could barely understand her at first. She said she had left her apartment because reporters and online commenters had found her address. She was staying with a cousin in Queens. "Tessa told me it was going to be soft cake," she said. "She said you would get mad, everyone would laugh, and then you two would hug. You said camera ready before she came toward me. I was on the headset. They told me to make sure all 3 operators were rolling." "Who told you?" "Tessa." Miles approved the coverage, but Tessa gave the timing. "Did you carry the pins?" Kendra went quiet. "I carried a flower kit into the prep room." "What was inside?" "Scissors, tape, wire, pins, everything the florist had left for emergencies." "Pearl-headed pins?" "Yes." The answer landed harder than I expected. "Did you put them in the cake?" "No. I swear I didn't." "Who did?" "I don't know. Tessa told me the flower she wanted to use was collapsing. She asked me to bring the kit. Then Diane sent me out to find powder for Tessa's face." "Was anyone else in the room?" "Tessa and her mother." I did not write the names down. The call was already being logged by my phone, but I was not recording the audio. I did not want Kendra to keep talking without understanding her legal position. "Stop," I said. "Do not tell me more until you have counsel. I need you to believe me. What I believe is not the most important thing right now. It is to me." I closed my eyes. Beneath the bandage, my cheek tightened with every word. "Kendra, you helped arrange cameras around me for a humiliation you thought was harmless. That was not harmless. But if you did not alter the flower, preserving the truth is the only thing that can separate what you did from what someone else did." She began crying again. Then she admitted she had deleted 2 messages from Tessa after the police called. One message said Kendra needed to remember that the bakery had built the flower. The other said friends protected each other when family members became vindictive. "I panicked," Kendra said. "I thought deleting them would keep me out of it." "Did you delete the whole thread?" "No, just those 2. Were your messages backed up?" "I think so. My phone syncs to the cloud. The other person may still have copies. Your lawyer can help you export the account properly. Do not try to restore or edit anything yourself." She promised she would not. After we ended the call, I sent my attorney a written summary of what Kendra had said. I did not contact her again that night. Kendra had known there would be a staged humiliation. She had positioned the cameras. She had carried the box containing the same type of pins later removed from my cheek. She had deleted messages after learning the police were involved. She was an obvious suspect. She was also frightened enough to be telling pieces of the truth before she understood how much they could hurt her. The next morning, Miles called me. He did not begin with an apology. "The bakery is going to confirm it used wire," he said. "That does not explain the corsage pins. It may explain that this was not intentional. Those are different questions." He exhaled through his nose. "Jocelyn, our business is frozen. Sponsors are asking whether Tessa planned to injure you. Employees are worried they will not be paid. You are not the only person affected. I was the only person who went to the emergency room. I know that. Do you?" His voice hardened. "I am trying to stop this from turning into a criminal circus." "Then tell the truth about the cameras." There was a pause. "What about them?" "They were aimed at my chair, the cake table, my family, and the exit. Not at the bride, not at the first dance. Me. They were reaction cameras." "Whose reaction?" "Guests. Family." I opened the floor map on my laptop. One camera covered the flower wall in my seat. One covered Colin, Avery, and my parents. One covered the path I would use to leave. "That is not general coverage." Miles did not answer. "Did you approve those placements?" I asked. "I approved a short-form content plan." "Did you read the plan?" "Yes." "What did it say about me?" Another pause, longer this time. "It described you as resistant to appearing on camera." "That is not what I asked." He lowered his voice. "It said you were controlling, that you often challenged Tessa during family events. The marketing team wanted authentic tension." "Marketing team?" Tessa wrote the character framing. I treated it like positioning, not a factual statement. "You approved a plan that turned me into a character without my permission." "I thought you would be background. I did not know about the pins." "Did you know she intended to provoke me?" "I knew there would be a cake prank." "Did you know she expected me to get angry?" "It was reaction content, Jocelyn. That is what reaction content is." The casual way he said it told me more than an apology would have. Miles did not think he had helped plan violence. He believed he had designed a controlled emotional event in which my discomfort was simply one production element. "Was Avery included in the plan?" I asked. "I never approved using a minor without a release." That was not an answer. "I have not seen any final Avery segment." "Have you seen the raw footage?" "No." "Then you do not know what your company possesses." "Our company is Tessa's company. You just called it ours." He ended the call a few seconds later. My attorney advised me not to call back. Instead, I wrote down his exact wording while it was fresh and sent the note to her. That afternoon, Marisol's photographs arrived. The first showed the finished cake in the bakery kitchen. The central flower cluster sat upright inside a translucent plastic pick. No pearl heads were visible. No black strip extended beyond the base. The sugar petals looked delicate enough to crack under a fingertip. The second photograph had been taken at the venue at 4:12 in the afternoon. A digital timestamp and delivery receipt placed it more than 3 hours before the reception. The flower remained intact inside the protective pick. The final photograph showed Marisol's assistant standing beside the cake after setup. Behind her, the preparation hallway door was open. On the wall beside it hung a sign-in sheet for restricted access. The venue provided the corresponding hallway footage the following day. It did not show anyone placing pins into the flower. The preparation room itself had no camera, but it showed the flower cluster leaving the cake. At 5:41, Kendra carried it into the room along with the emergency floral kit. At 5:44, she came out alone and walked quickly toward the bridal suite. At 5:52, Diane entered the preparation room carrying a cosmetic bag. At 5:58, Diane left without it. At 6:03, Tessa emerged holding the flower cluster in both hands. It looked stiffer than it had in the delivery photograph. She handed it to the event manager, who returned it to the cake because the bride had requested a last-minute adjustment. The manager later stated that he assumed the decoration had been repaired by the wedding florist. The wedding florist had already left. The venue's electronic access log confirmed that only 4 authorized people entered the preparation area after the bakery delivery. Tessa, Diane, Kendra, and the event manager. The manager had been inside for less than a minute earlier in the afternoon to check refrigeration. The footage showed him empty-handed when he entered and when he left. I studied the remaining 3 names. Kendra had carried the pins into the room. Diane had entered while they were there. Tessa had carried the altered flower back out. Detective Morales called while I was still looking at the timestamps. "We have confirmed the decoration was changed after delivery," she said. "Then the bakery is cleared?" "We have no evidence the foreign pins were introduced by the bakery." I looked at the 4 names again. "What happens now?" "We determine who had access and what each person knew." Her next question was the same one the evidence had been asking since the hospital. Who had access after delivery? The official list contained 4 people, but only 3 of them had been near the flower long enough to change it. My sister, my mother, and the woman who had just admitted she helped position the cameras around me. Diane arrived at my apartment on Thursday afternoon carrying white lilies, chicken soup, and an envelope thick enough to contain more than a sympathy card. She stood outside my door in a camel-colored coat, her hair smooth, her makeup untouched by the week that had passed since the wedding. Anyone walking through the hallway would have seen a concerned mother visiting her injured daughter. I saw the flowers first. White lilies had filled the conservatory where Tessa drove the cake into my face. Their scent had clung to the frosting and followed me into the ambulance. Diane knew that. She had chosen them for the centerpieces. "I brought lunch," she said. "You haven't been taking care of yourself. I'm following the doctor's instructions." Her gaze moved to the bandage along my cheek. For a moment, I thought she might finally ask whether the numbness had improved. Instead, she looked behind me. "Are you going to make me stand in the hallway?" I let her in because I wanted to hear what she had come to say. I did not hug her, and I did not take the lilies. She placed them on the kitchen counter beside the paper bag from the hospital, then began opening containers as though this were an ordinary Thursday. "You always liked the soup from Bellini's," she said. "I haven't eaten chicken in 6 years." Her hands paused over the lid. "Well, you used to like it." That was how my mother remembered people. She preserved whatever version of them had once been most convenient and treated every change as an act of disobedience. She set the food aside and touched the envelope. "Tessa is devastated." "I'm sure she is. She has barely slept. Miles says she wakes up crying." My face was stitched shut while she posted a video calling me jealous. She was frightened. So was I. Diane released a slow breath. "You are determined to make this impossible. I didn't bring paperwork to your house." Her fingers tightened around the envelope. Then she placed it on the table between us. "This is not an admission of wrongdoing. It is an attempt to prevent further damage." I opened it without touching the pen tucked inside. The first document offered to cover my outstanding medical expenses, the income I had lost from private sessions, and an additional payment of $75,000. In exchange, I would release Tessa, Miles, Diane, Walter, the content company, and several unnamed affiliated parties from civil claims. The second document was a confidentiality agreement. It prohibited me from discussing the wedding, the videos, the family's business arrangements, any recordings involving relatives, and all communications connected to Tessa's media projects. The language did not mention Avery by name. It did not need to. "You had this prepared quickly," I said. "Our attorney understands urgency." "Whose attorney?" "The family's." "There is no family attorney, Mom. There is Tessa's attorney, her company's attorney, and whoever is protecting your financial interest." Color rose beneath Diane's foundation. "You think everything is a conspiracy because you cannot tolerate anyone having a life you did not approve." I took photographs of every page, including the envelope and the handwritten note on the front. Then I placed the documents back on the table. "I'm not signing this." "You haven't even read it properly." "I read enough to know it buys my silence about more than my injury." "It buys peace." "No, it buys control." Diane pushed the pen toward me. "You have always confused privacy with control." I looked at the lilies, then at the food I no longer ate, and finally at the woman who had entered my home with a script for how my pain should end. "At the wedding," I said, "why did you look at the camera before you looked at my face?" Her expression changed so slightly that someone who did not know her might have missed it. Her chin lifted by half an inch. Her fingertips left the pen. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The video shows it. You were covered in cake. Everyone was confused. You looked at the recording light, Then you told me not to make a scene. Because you were already escalating. I had blood running down my dress. You were pushing people away and issuing orders. I told the person who injured me not to touch me again. Diane folded her arms. You always know how to make yourself sound reasonable afterward. That sentence told me she had not come to learn what happened. She had come to restore the version in which I was the problem. I slid the envelope away from me. My lawyer will respond. Her mouth tightened. Bringing lawyers into this will not change who you are. No, it changes what you can get away with. She stood so quickly that the chair scraped the floor. For a few seconds we faced each other across the table. Then she softened. It was the more dangerous version of my mother. Jocelyn, I know you think I failed you, she said. Maybe I did, in ways I didn't understand. But destroying your sister's future will not heal you. I'm not trying to destroy her future. You have frozen her contracts. You have frightened her employees. You have dragged the police to her home 3 days after her wedding. I reported an assault. It was an accident. Then why does the agreement require silence about every family recording? Diane looked toward the window. That was enough. After she left, I sealed the documents in a folder and called my attorney. She instructed me not to respond directly and sent a courier to collect the originals that evening. The NDA did not prove who altered the flour. It did prove that the people offering money were worried about more than a bakery defect. The next morning, my attorney forwarded an email produced voluntarily by the event coordinator. The subject line read, "Final Family Visual Notes." It had been sent 5 days before the wedding by the stylist working under Tessa's content company. Most of it concerned flowers, linens, camera-safe makeup, and the timing of sunset beneath the conservatory roof. One line concerned me. Keep Jocelyn light. Dark colors disappear on camera. Diane had called me 3 times that same week to object to the navy dress I planned to wear. She said the color was severe. She said it would make me look older. She said family photographs should feel warm, and that Tessa had selected a cream dress for me at considerable expense. I had refused the dress at first. Then Avery asked me to stop arguing because Diane had been complaining about it every day. I gave in, not for my mother, but because I did not want Avery carrying another conflict into the wedding. The email did not prove Diane wanted blood to show against pale fabric. It could have been an ordinary visual instruction for a filmed event, but it established something important. My clothes had been discussed as part of the production. The seating chart told the same story. The original plan, created 6 weeks before the wedding, placed me at the end of the family table near the garden doors. The position suited me. I could leave without crossing the dance floor, and Avery would be 2 seats away. A revised chart had been uploaded at 8:14 on the morning of the ceremony. My seat had moved closer to the cake table, beneath the brightest fixed light, where all 3 unofficial cameras could capture me. The venue coordinator, Hannah Brooks, agreed to speak with my attorney. I joined the call but let the lawyer ask most of the questions. Hannah sounded exhausted. Tessa's followers had been contacting the venue, and reporters had begun requesting staff interviews. "Who asked you to change the seat?" my attorney asked. "Diane Ward," Hannah said. She said there was going to be a family reconciliation moment, and Jocelyn needed to be where the cameras could see her. Did she explain what the reconciliation involved? No. I assumed a toast or a speech. Did she discuss the cake? She asked whether the cake table could be moved 6 feet toward the family section. Fire access rules prevented that, so we adjusted the family seating instead. Did she mention Jocelyn's clothing? Hannah hesitated. She said the cream dress would help the shot feel softer. I wrote down the exact wording. My mother had not merely attended the wedding while Tessa planned a surprise. She had helped arrange the room around a moment involving me. That still did not prove she knew about the pins. It proved she expected something to happen. By Saturday, Diane had called 4 times and left 3 messages. I did not answer until she wrote that Walter's blood pressure was dangerously high because of what I was doing. I called her, not because I believed the claim, but because I wanted her to stop using my father's health as a weapon. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want you to understand the consequences." "I understand mine. This is bigger than your stitches." "I know. Tessa's series supports real people, her staff, your father and me, the educational fund, the commitments she has already made. What educational fund? Diane became silent. Avery's, she said after a moment. I sat straighter. What does Avery have to do with Tessa's series? Don't twist my words. You said the series supports Avery's educational fund? It was part of the family arrangement. What arrangement? Tessa planned to set aside a percentage of the project. It was generous. In exchange for what? For telling a story that could help other young people. I tightened my grip on the phone. Which story? Diane's voice lowered. Avery has been unstable since losing her mother. Pretending otherwise does not protect her. There it was. Not an accidental reference to a vague family project. Diane knew exactly which child, which pain, and which footage were at risk. Avery is grieving, I said. She is not content. No one said she was. You just tied her college fund to the series. Because money from the series could help her. Who gave permission to use the video? Colin knows Tessa has always documented the family. That is not permission. He has accepted money from her. That is not permission either. Diane's patience snapped. You think morality is easy because you have never had to raise a child alone. Colin was 19 when Avery was born. Then he lost his wife. Your father and I carried that family while you visited on weekends and criticized how we did it. I helped whenever Colin allowed me to. You helped on your terms. Tessa created opportunities. Tessa filmed Avery while she could not breathe. She captured a difficult moment that could become meaningful. Did Avery agree? She is 16. She does not understand the long-term value. The room around me seemed to narrow. Send me the release, I said. What? The signed permission authorizing Tessa to use Avery's panic attack in a commercial series. Send it to me and Colin. This is exactly why no one can talk to you. You turn every conversation into an interrogation. Because you answer every question except the one I ask. Diane ended the call. I contacted Colin immediately. He answered from his car. I could hear traffic. And the rhythm of his turn signal. Did you sign a release for Tessa to use footage of Avery? I asked. He sighed. Not this again. Mom just said Avery's college fund is tied to the series. What college fund? You tell me. I know Tessa mentioned setting aside money. I never agreed to put Avery in a show. Did you sign anything? I've signed school forms, medical forms, family trust papers. Mom brings things over all the time. That is not an answer. I don't remember signing a media release. Then check. I'm working. This concerns your daughter. Everything concerns my daughter when you need a reason to attack the family. My cheek burned beneath the healing skin. If you refuse to look at the documents, you are choosing them over her again. The word again changed the entire call. Colin stopped speaking. I heard the turn signal click several more times before it went silent. You don't get to say that to me, he said. I'm trying to make you understand the risk. No, you're trying to be the only adult who ever protected Avery. That is not what I said. It is what you meant. He hung up. I nearly called him back. I had facts on my side. Diane had admitted knowledge of the footage. Colin could not remember signing a release. A commercial project was using his daughter's grief as a planned narrative. But the way I had spoken turned an urgent question into a judgment of his entire life. I had stepped into the role I accused my family of assigning me. I became the competent older sister, who believed that seeing a danger first gave her the right to take control of everyone else. I sent Colin one message. I should not have said again. The release still needs to be checked. I will not contact Avery about legal decisions without you. He did not reply. Avery contacted me that night. The message came from an account I did not recognize. The profile had no photograph and no previous posts. Aunt Jay. It's me. Please don't tell Grandma, I wrote. She attached 3 photographs. The first showed Tessa's laptop open on a desk. A video editing program filled the screen. In the preview window, Avery sat on the floor with both arms wrapped around her head. The second photograph showed a row of audio tracks. One had been labeled Panic Breathing Clean. The third showed the file name at the top of the project. Episode 6. Avery's Breakthrough Final Arc. My fingers went cold around the phone. Where did you take these? I wrote. At Grandma's house in June. Tessa left her laptop open. I I took pictures because she told me she deleted it. Did you open any files? No, it was already there. Do you still have the device you used? Yes. Keep it. Don't edit the photos or send them to anyone else. Don't access Tessa's accounts or laptop again. Tell your dad you contacted me. Avery took several minutes to answer. He'll say, I'm making everything worse. He needs to know. You should be the one who tells him, but I can be there when you do. Another pause followed. Then she wrote, I told Tessa to stop that night. She said I would thank her when I saw how many girls I helped. I stared at the title again. Avery's worst night was not sitting forgotten on an old hard drive. It had been cleaned, labeled, placed inside an episode, and assigned a role in the final arc of Tessa's series. Tessa had not kept the footage because she happened to record it. She had kept it because she already knew where she wanted to use it. Colin arrived at my attorney's office 10 minutes late, with Avery beside him and an expression that told me he had considered turning the car around more than once. Avery wore the same gray sweatshirt from the photographs on Tessa's laptop. She kept her sleeves pulled over her hands and chose the chair farthest from the glass conference room wall. My attorney had arranged the meeting so none of us had to enter a police station or one of our parents' homes. No cameras were present. No one was recording. Before we began, she explained that Avery controlled how much she wanted to say and could stop the conversation at any time. Colin looked at me. You could have told me about the video before the wedding. I should have. The admission surprised him. I folded my hands on the table. I was trying to protect Avery's privacy until I knew exactly what Tessa had. I also thought I could stop it quietly. I was wrong. You told me I wasn't acting like her father. I was angry, and I said it in the cruelest way possible. I'm sorry for that. He waited as though expecting me to withdraw everything else. I'm not sorry that I raised the alarm, I continued. The danger was real, but I should not have treated you like an obstacle instead of Avery's parent. Colin leaned back. Some of the tension left his shoulders, but not all of it. Avery looked between us. Can I just tell you what happened? We both stopped. She described a night in June when she had been staying at my parents' house. A smell from one of her mother's old scarves triggered a panic attack. Her chest tightened, her hands went numb, and she slid to the floor because she could not keep her balance. Tessa had been visiting with a camera bag. At first I thought she was calling Dad, Avery said. Then I saw the phone. Did she tell you she was filming? My attorney asked. No. What did you say? I told her to stop. Avery rubbed one covered thumb across the other. She said she needed a little more footage so people could understand what grief really looked like. I told her I didn't want anyone to see me like that. She said she would delete it. Did she help you breathe? Colin asked. Avery's eyes dropped. Grandma brought me water. Aunt Tessa kept asking questions. What kind of questions? How much I missed Mom. Whether I felt abandoned. Whether I blamed Dad for working so much. Colin's face lost color. Avery looked at him quickly. I didn't say I blamed you. I know. She kept asking until Grandma told her I needed to lie down. My attorney asked whether Avery had ever signed anything or verbally agreed to use the video. No. Did anyone tell you money might be placed in a college fund? Grandma said Aunt Tessa's show could pay for college if I cooperated. I thought she meant interviews later. I didn't know they already had an episode. Colin stared at the table. Several years earlier, when his wife became ill, our parents had begun managing forms, appointments, and bills for him. After she died, Diane continued. She kept copies of insurance information, school records, and passwords Colin rarely used. He had accepted the help because he had become a father at 19 and a widower at 32. For most of his adult life, someone else had been telling him which crisis needed his attention first. Tessa mentioned a family feature last spring, he said. She said a percentage could go into an education account for Avery. I told her we could discuss it when there was an actual proposal. Did you authorize Mom to sign anything? I asked. No. Did you give Tessa permission to use footage of a panic attack? No. His answer came faster. Colin opened his phone and searched his messages. After several minutes, he found a text Diane had sent in July. Don't worry about Tessa's paperwork. I handled the family permissions so you can focus on Avery. Colin read it twice. I thought she meant the general wedding releases, he said. Avery's voice was quiet. There shouldn't have been a general permission for me. No, Colin said, there shouldn't have been. That was the moment he stopped asking whether I was overreacting and began asking what our mother had signed. The meeting ended with a clear agreement. Avery would not be contacted by Tessa, Diane, a sponsor, or any lawyer without Colin knowing. She would decide what details she wanted included in a statement. No one would post the photographs she had taken from Tessa's laptop. For the first time since the wedding, I did not leave with another responsibility added to my list. Colin took the original role he should have held. He would make the parental requests. My attorney would handle the records. Avery would decide what happened to her own story. That evening, I searched my archived work files for an email Tessa had sent me 5 months earlier. The subject line was family schedule draft. I had assumed it concerned wedding appointments. Seconds after sending it, Tessa had tried to recall the message and followed with another email saying the attachment was an outdated vendor document. The recall had failed because I had already opened the message on my work laptop. Our system automatically backed up, downloaded attachments for 30 days, and I had later copied the file into my personal archive while organizing wedding correspondence. I had never opened it again. The attachment was not a vendor schedule. It was a 96-page pitch deck for Perfectly Imperfect. The first pages presented Tessa and Diane as the emotional center of a close but complicated American family. Walter was described as the quiet father who avoided conflict. Colin was the hardworking widower learning to accept help. Avery was introduced as a grieving teenager who had closed herself off from healing. Then I reached my page. Jocelyn Ward, the estranged, controlling older sister, highly educated, emotionally guarded, and threatened by Tessa's ability to connect with others. Her resistance creates the conflict the family must overcome. I read the description 3 times. Some details were true. I did keep my distance. I did challenge Tessa. My emails were often blunt. She had taken recognizable pieces of me and arranged them into a person her audience would enjoy disliking. The deck did not say I would attend the wedding peacefully and become angry only after being injured. It described my anger as inevitable. My attorney warned me that the file metadata alone could not prove when the material had been created. Dates inside a document could be changed. The email timestamp was harder to dismiss. I had received the attachment in April, 5 months before the wedding. 2 days later, the sponsor's legal department confirmed through its compliance review that Tessa had submitted a version of the same pitch deck in May. Their submission log matched the file name and page count. The wedding had not yet happened. The sponsor's copy contained an episode timeline that mine did not. Episode 1 introduced the family and hinted at old resentments. Episode 2 centered on Avery's grief. Episode 3 was labeled Wedding Rupture. Beneath it, Tessa had written, Jocelyn's inability to celebrate her sister causes a public break. Tessa chooses grace. Diane refuses to abandon either daughter. The next episode promised consequences, family division, and a private reconciliation. The final episode was titled Healing the Ward Women. Tessa had sold both my collapse and her forgiveness before she had a wedding license. Near the end of the deck, I found a page of sample promotional images. One showed a faceless bride in white. Another showed a woman in a cream dress raising one arm near a wedding cake. Across the image were the words, "My jealous sister ruined my wedding." The file had been submitted 4 months before Diane pressured me to wear cream. My attorney enlarged the page and studied the image. "This does not prove they planned the exact assault," she said. "It proves they had planned a public conflict involving you. They needed me to become this person. They needed footage that supported the character they sold." I thought about the 3 cameras around my chair. The brighter light, the changed seating chart, Kendra being told not to pull Tessa away too soon. The cake was no longer an isolated act of cruelty. It was production. Tessa responded before the sponsor finished its review. She posted screenshots of emails I had sent over the previous year. In one, I told her that recording vulnerable relatives was predatory. In another, I wrote that someone would eventually hold her accountable. She removed the surrounding conversation and captioned the images. "My sister has been threatening my career for months. Now she is using a private family video to demand money." I had never demanded money from her. My attorney had sent notice of potential claims for medical costs, lost income, and the preservation of evidence. Tessa called that extortion. This time, her story worked because the emails were real. They sounded cold. They sounded judgmental. They showed the part of me that had stopped trying to persuade Tessa gently years earlier. The clinic extended its internal review by another week. My base salary continued, but I lost a weekend workshop and the remainder of my evening contract sessions for the month. My attorney added the canceled agreements and payroll records to the damages file. I wanted to release the pitch deck immediately. One upload would prove that Tessa had described me as the wedding villain before the wedding occurred. My attorney advised against posting the full document because it also contained information about Avery. For once, I did not argue that I could redact it myself. I called Colin and Avery. We met again in the same conference room. Avery reviewed the pages that referred to her. She agreed that my attorney could use the teaser photographs, her statement, and limited portions of the pitch deck in legal and sponsor compliance proceedings. She refused permission to release the panic attack video or detailed descriptions of what happened. No crying clip, she said, even if it makes people believe you. I looked at her. Agreed. What if they keep saying you lied? Then we prove what we can without using what belongs to you. Colin signed the parental authorization for the limited legal use Avery had chosen. He also signed the formal demands concerning the preservation and removal of her footage. Before we left, Avery asked me one more question. Are you mad that I won't let you show the video? No. It was not entirely true. Part of me wanted the fastest piece of evidence available. I wanted strangers to hear Avery say, "Stop and watch Tessa ignore her." But wanting to use it did not make it mine. I'm angry that they put you in a position where you have to protect yourself from the people who claimed they were helping, I said. I'm not angry at your decision. She nodded. That night, I opened the sponsor-confirmed timeline again. Wedding rupture. Public break. Tessa chooses Grace. The sequence looked less like a prediction each time I read it, and more like instructions. The cake was not where her plan began. It was where my part of her plan was supposed to become visible. The sponsor's legal department opened its compliance review 11 days after the wedding. They did not do it because my attorney ordered them to. She had no authority to force a private company to hand over its records without formal discovery or a subpoena. They opened the review because the hospital report, the altered cake decoration, and the pitch deck created a problem their lawyers could no longer classify as family drama. The company had paid for a series built around real people. Now one participant had been injured, another was a minor who denied giving permission. And the central conflict appeared to have been planned before it happened. Their attorney agreed to share a limited set of documents with the lawyers representing the involved parties. The company held back the rest in case litigation required formal discovery. The first file contained the release authorizing Tessa's company to use Avery's name, image, voice, medical history, and personal story. Colin's name appeared at the bottom. For several seconds, none of us spoke. We were sitting in my attorney's conference room again. Colin stared at the electronic signature, as though looking long enough might turn it into something he remembered doing. I did not sign this, he said. My attorney enlarged the audit information attached to the document. She explained it without pretending that one technical detail could settle everything. The release had been sent to a secondary email account created years earlier when Colin's wife was sick. Diane had helped manage that account because Colin was juggling hospital visits, childcare, and work. The link had been opened from a tablet associated with my parents' home. The verification text had gone to a phone number Diane used for family administrative matters. None of that alone proved she had signed it. A device could be shared, an email account could be accessed by more than one person, an address could identify a household without identifying the hand that clicked the button. Then my attorney showed us the timestamp. The release had been completed at 10:14 on a Tuesday morning. Colin had been at a construction site in Albany that day. His employer's time records, security check-in, and company vehicle log placed him more than 100 miles away. Did you ever tell your mother she could sign media releases for Avery? My attorney asked. No. Did you authorize her verbally? No. Did you tell her she could decide whether footage of Avery's panic attack could be sold? Colin's jaw tightened. Absolutely not. The payment sheet came next. It listed a projected education contribution for Avery, contingent on the completion and delivery of the series. The money had not yet been placed in an account for her. It was a promised allocation from future revenue. Beside it was another payment. Management consulting fee. Diane Ward. My mother had been receiving a percentage of Tessa's family content income for more than a year. Colin leaned back and stared at the ceiling. She told me Tessa was setting money aside because she cared about Avery. She was being paid to manage the project, I said. My attorney raised one hand before the conversation turned into another argument. We know she received fees, she said. We do not yet know what services she claimed to provide. Do not assume more than the document proves. That correction was meant for both of us. I had spent years accusing my family of changing facts to fit the story they wanted. I could not begin doing the same thing simply because this story favored me. Colin called Diane from the conference room and asked her to meet him at our parents' house that evening. He did not invite me. A month earlier, I would have insisted on going. I would have told myself he needed someone who understood the evidence and could stop Diane from redirecting the conversation. This time, I stayed out of it. The confrontation belonged to Colin because the signature was his and Avery was his daughter. I learned what happened afterward from Colin. From an email his attorney sent documenting his account, and from a short message Walter later forwarded to my lawyer. I did not witness the scene, and I could not know what anyone thought inside that house. Colin told me he placed the release on the kitchen table and asked Diane one question. Did you sign my name? At first, she said she had handled paperwork the way she always had. Colin asked again. Diane said he had been overwhelmed and that she had saved him from missing an opportunity. He asked whether he had authorized her to sign. She said he would have agreed if Tessa had explained the benefits properly. That is not authorization, Colin told her. Walter tried to calm them. He said the series could have funded therapy, college, and financial stability for Avery. Colin asked where the education money was. Diane said the project had not been delivered yet. He asked how much she had earned from managing Tessa. She called the question insulting. Then Colin asked the question that ended the argument. Did Avery say stop? Diane did not answer. According to Colin, Walter looked at her and asked the same thing. Diane said the footage had been taken during an emotional moment and could not be judged without context. Colin left before she could turn that explanation into consent. The following morning, Diane sent my attorney an email. She admitted completing the release but denied forging anything. She wrote that she believed she had standing family authority because Colin had allowed her to manage school, insurance, and medical paperwork after his wife died. She insisted he had discussed Tessa's project positively and would have approved the release if he had not been influenced by me. Her admission mattered because it connected the audit trail to an actual person. The tablet and secondary email were not being treated as magical proof. Diane herself confirmed that she had completed the form. She also confirmed that Colin had not approved that specific document beforehand. Tessa released another statement that afternoon. She claimed the dispute over Avery's release was a misunderstanding between a busy single father and a grandmother who had handled family paperwork for years. She said no footage would be released until the family reached an agreement. The statement made her sound considerate. It did not mention that she had already edited the footage, built an episode around it, and sold that episode as part of a commercial series. The sponsor's compliance attorney asked whether Colin and Avery would permit a restricted review of the original recording. They did not ask to publish it. They wanted to determine whether the footage matched the circumstances described in the pitch materials and whether Avery had objected while it was being recorded. My attorney told us the full video could reverse the public narrative quickly. If people hear Avery asking Tessa to stop, it becomes difficult to maintain that this was voluntary family storytelling, she said. I understood the legal point. I also understood how easily a private review could become a public leak. One screenshot, one copied file, one employee who believed exposure served a greater good, and Avery's worst night would belong to strangers forever. We met in a secure review room at my attorney's office. The video was not emailed to us. It remained on an encrypted legal platform, and access was logged. Avery sat between Colin and me. Before the playback began, my attorney reminded her that she could stop it at any moment. The video opened with a tilted view of my parents' guest room. Avery was on the floor beside the bed, trying to pull air into her lungs. Diane knelt nearby with a glass of water. Tessa's voice came from behind the phone. "Tell me what you're feeling." Avery shook her head. "Is it because you miss your mom?" Avery covered her face. "I don't want you filming." Tessa moved closer instead of lowering the phone. "This could help people understand you." "Stop." Tessa's voice softened into the tone she used for emotional interviews. "Just give me 30 more seconds." I reached forward and stopped the video. Only 18 seconds had played. The room stayed quiet until Avery spoke. "You can show that part." I looked at her. "You don't have to decide now." "I already decided. They need to hear me say stop." My attorney explained the available limits. Avery and Colin could authorize a short excerpt for a defined compliance purpose. The clip would be shown only to the sponsor's legal and review team. It could not be copied, live-streamed, used in advertising, or included in public filings without a separate legal basis and further permission. Avery asked whether Tessa would be in the room. "Not during the initial review," the attorney said. "Will Aunt Jocelyn post it?" "No," I said. Avery searched my face. Even then, a part of me wanted to use the clip. I wanted every person who had called me jealous to hear Tessa bargain for 30 more seconds while a grieving teenager begged her to stop. That desire embarrassed me, but denying it would have been another lie. "I want people to know what she did," I told Avery. "But wanting that does not give me ownership of what happened to you." Avery nodded. "Then I want the lawyers to see it, not everyone." Colin and Avery signed a limited authorization prepared specifically for the compliance review. Avery wrote one sentence in her own handwriting beneath her name. "I am allowing this because I want the company to know I said no." The restricted clip and her statement were transferred to the sponsor through the secure portal. Walter came to my apartment 2 days later. He looked older than he had at the wedding. His shirt collar sat unevenly, and he carried no flowers, food, or prepared apology. "I want to settle this before the family loses everything," he said. "Talk to my attorney." "I am talking to my daughter." "You are asking your daughter to make a legal decision that affects several victims and multiple investigations. Talk to my attorney." He sat at my kitchen table and placed a handwritten page in front of me. He and Diane had a home equity line of credit available. They also had a small investment account Walter had intended to preserve for retirement. Together, he believed they could fund a civil settlement without forcing Tessa to sell her home immediately. The numbers were not enough to cover the sponsor's potential repayment demand, Tessa's legal costs, my damages, and any other claims that might follow. It was enough to weaken my parents financially for years. "Why are you offering your retirement money?" I asked. "Because this has gone too far." It went too far when she drove metal into my face. I mean the consequences. That is usually when people decide harm has gone too far. When it reaches them. Walter rubbed both hands across his knees. "Tessa has been helping us." "How much?" He looked toward the window. "How much, Dad?" "About $4,000 a month." The figure surprised me, not because it made my parents wealthy, but because it explained the panic behind their loyalty. $4,000 a month covered property taxes, insurance, part of their mortgage, and the expenses Walter's retirement income no longer stretched far enough to meet. "Why were you taking that much from her?" Diane said it was management income. Tessa said the family stories would not exist without us. "Did you know Mom received a percentage?" I knew she was helping with scheduling and permissions. "Did you know she signed Colin's name?" No. I could not tell whether that answer was true. I could only record what he said and compare it with the evidence later. Walter lowered his voice. "If Tessa loses the sponsor, the payments stop. If they demand the advance back, she may lose the house. Miles is already talking about separating their finances. Your mother could be charged over a form she believed she had permission to complete. And Avery could have had her panic attack sold because none of you thought her refusal mattered. We thought the money would help her. You keep describing payment as permission." He flinched. I slid the page back to him. "I will not accept a private offer. Send it to my attorney. Any settlement must address the evidence, the videos, Avery's rights, my medical costs, my lost income, and every person whose content was used without valid consent. Do you want your sister in prison? I want the process to stop depending on what I want." That was the truth. I wanted Tessa punished. I wanted Diane exposed. I wanted everyone who had doubted me to admit it publicly. But criminal charges belonged to prosecutors. Civil claims belonged with lawyers and courts. Avery's story belonged to Avery. My role was not to control every outcome. It was to stop surrendering decisions that were actually mine. Colin began doing the same. He contacted Avery's school counselor himself and arranged safeguards in case classmates found the teaser. He retained separate counsel concerning the release. He requested all records carrying his signature and notified the sponsor in writing that Diane had no authority to execute documents for him or Avery. Avery wrote her own statement. She did not call Tessa evil. She did not describe every detail of the panic attack. She wrote that she had asked for filming to stop, had been told the footage would be deleted, and had never agreed to become a character in a commercial series. She let Colin read it, but she did not let him rewrite it. I read it only after she gave me permission. That was how the balance began to change. Colin stopped handing his responsibilities to our parents. I stopped taking them from him. Avery stopped being the reason adults fought and became a person whose decisions shaped what happened next. The sponsor sent its preliminary compliance findings the following week. The release could not be treated as valid parental consent. The description of the filming circumstances was materially inconsistent with the restricted clip. Payments connected to Avery's episode were frozen. The series remained suspended pending a wider review. Attached to the report was a list of people who had received money from Tessa's company. Diane's name appeared repeatedly. Consulting fee, family access management, participant coordination, release administration. My mother had not protected Tessa because she believed her. She had protected the business because she was part of it. Nora Price contacted my attorney 4 days after the sponsor froze every payment connected to Perfectly Imperfect. Her name had appeared beneath several of Tessa's older videos, including the cached page I had saved after the wedding. She had edited family content for Tessa for almost 2 years, then disappeared from the credits the previous spring. Nora did not call me directly. She wrote to my attorney and asked whether the office could verify that she would not be accused of stealing company property if she disclosed files connected to the wedding. Before anyone reviewed a single document, the lawyers established where the files had come from. Tessa's company had used a commercial storage platform that allowed freelance editors to retain assigned projects while invoices remained unpaid. Nora still had authorized access to several folders because Tessa owed her more than $18,000. She had not broken into an account, guessed a password, or copied anything from Tessa's personal devices. The storage provider confirmed Nora's permissions, file history, and download logs. Only then did my attorney invite her to the office. Nora was 42, with cropped dark hair and the exhausted expression of someone who had spent too many years making other people appear more sincere than they were. She brought her own attorney and a company-issued external drive sealed inside an evidence bag. "I'm not asking for money," she said before she sat down. "I want the unpaid invoices handled separately. I came because I saw what happened to you, and I recognized the edit." "What did you recognize?" I asked. "The ending before the event." She opened a folder titled Jocelyn Meltdown Final. My own name looked obscene written that way. The folder had been created in May, 4 months before the wedding. Server records showed each upload and revision. Emails from Tessa assigned tasks to Nora and 2 other freelancers. The files had not been dropped into the folder after the assault to make the plan look older. The first document was a production timeline. Guests seated by 6:15, family toast by 6:40. Cake provocation between 7:10 and 7:20. Jocelyn reaction coverage, all cameras. The next file contained the floor plan I had already seen. But this version included handwritten notes. Camera A. Clean profile on Jocelyn. Camera B. Diane and Colin reaction. Camera C. Exit follow. Beside the garden camera, someone had typed, "If she walks, follow. Do not cut until she reaches the parking area." The wardrobe page contained photographs of cream, ivory, pale pink, and beige dresses. Dark colors flatten blood and frosting. My mother's insistence that I wear cream no longer looked like a preference. It looked like a production requirement. A list of suggested conversation prompts appeared beneath the wardrobe notes. Ask why she never married. Mention that Tessa built something while Jocelyn only criticizes. Ask whether she resents Avery trusting Tessa. Bring up mom's financial help. The questions were designed to create anger before the cake arrived. Nora clicked another file. It was a thumbnail created in June. A stock photograph of a woman raising one arm had been placed beside an image of a bride crying. Across the center were the words, "My jealous sister ruined my wedding." The woman's dress had been digitally changed to cream. "They did not have a photograph of you yet," Nora said. "The instruction was to replace the model after the wedding." My attorney asked whether Nora had known Tessa intended to injure me. "No," she said. "I knew they wanted an emotional confrontation." Tessa said Jocelyn would criticize the cameras, refuse the prank, and storm out. "I thought it was manipulative. I did not think anyone would put metal in her face. Why did you keep working on it?" Nora looked directly at me. "Because I told myself editing was not the same as causing it." Her answer sounded painfully familiar. Miles had told himself approving reaction coverage was not the same as harming me. Kendra had told herself keeping guests in frame was not the same as attacking me. Walter had told himself accepting money was not the same as asking where it came from. Every person around Tessa had divided the machine into small enough pieces that no one felt responsible for what it produced. Nora showed us the final instruction file. If she laughs, Tessa pivots to sisterhood. If she freezes, Tessa pushes. If she walks, follow. If she gets angry, hold on Diane. The plan contained branches for every reaction except the one I gave. Medical assistance. Preserved footage. Police report. Nora had refused one later assignment involving Avery. Tessa wanted the panic attack footage cleaned, with breathing sounds isolated and Diane's interruptions removed. "That was when I quit," Nora said. "You did not report it?" my attorney asked. I told myself the father must have signed something. Tessa sent me a release with Colin's name. Nora's voice lowered. I should have asked whether the girl had said no. She signed an affidavit describing the workflow, her authorized access, and the instructions she received. She also provided the original assignment emails and the storage platform's verification records. The folder proved Tessa had planned to provoke me. It did not prove who placed the pins inside the flower. For that, we still needed someone who had been in the preparation room. Kendra came to the office the following week with her attorney. She looked different without wedding makeup and carefully arranged hair. Her face had broken out along her jaw, and she kept glancing at the door whenever someone passed in the hallway. Tessa's company had sent her a cease and desist letter, accusing her of stealing trade secrets, damaging contractual relationships, and spreading false allegations. Nora had received an almost identical letter. My attorney advised both women that the threats did not prove Tessa had committed assault. They did show how quickly she used legal pressure against people who challenged her version. Kendra placed her phone on the conference table. "I need to explain why I recorded them," she said. She had known about the prank for 3 weeks. Tessa told her it would involve soft cake and a sugar flower that would collapse on contact. Kendra's job was to cue the camera operators, guide nearby guests away from the frame, and make sure I could not see Tessa approach. 2 days before the wedding, Tessa complained that the sample decoration bent too easily. She said she needed something reinforced, Kendra told us. I thought she meant thicker sugar or a stronger plastic pick. On the wedding day, Diane asked Kendra to bring the emergency floral kit into the preparation room. It contained tape, wire, small scissors, green pins, and pearl-headed corsage pins. Kendra placed the kit on the counter. Tessa examined the pearl pins. Diane sent Kendra out to retrieve face powder from the bridal suite. When I came back, the flower was already different, Kendra said. It did not bend when Tessa held it. I asked what she had done. She told me to focus on the cameras. Kendra said she became frightened that if something went wrong, Tessa would claim the maid of honor had altered the decoration. She opened the voice recording application on her phone before asking about it again. Under New York law, her attorney explained. Kendra could record a conversation in which she was personally participating. She had not left a device hidden in an empty room or recorded people while she was absent. The original file remained on her phone. A forensic specialist had copied it, calculated a digital hash, and confirmed there were no cuts in the relevant section. Background noise was reduced slightly for clarity, but the important words had been audible in the untouched file. We listened to the complete exchange, not only the damaging lines. Tessa's voice came first. Camera A needs her profile. Don't let that waiter block the table again. Kendra asked, What did you put in the flower? Nothing dangerous. It feels hard. It needs to hold together. What if it cuts her? There was a pause, followed by the sound of something being placed on a counter. Then Tessa said, "A scratch is enough. She panics when she sees blood." My stomach tightened even though I had already read the transcript. Kendra replied, "That isn't what you told me." Diane entered the conversation. "No one is hurting Jocelyn. She will get frosting on her dress, overreact, and leave. That is what she always does." "What if she walks before the cameras get it?" Kendra asked. Diane answered, "Then she does not walk until they do." Kendra said she wanted no part of it. Tessa laughed. "You are already part of it. You arranged the crew." The recording continued for another 4 minutes. Tessa never said she intended to cause a deep wound. She repeatedly described the result as a scratch, visible blood, and a dramatic reaction. That distinction mattered legally. It did not make the plan harmless. Tessa understood that the reinforced object could cut me. She wanted enough blood to trigger fear. Diane wanted me contained until the cameras captured it. Kendra's hands trembled after the audio ended. "I should have stopped it," she said. "Yes," I answered. Her attorney looked toward me, perhaps expecting reassurance. I did not offer absolution. "You helped them corner me," I continued. "You knew they wanted to humiliate me. You did not know how badly I would be injured, but you knew I had not consented." Kendra nodded, crying silently. "I'm sorry." "I believe you are sorry. That does not erase your part." My attorney glanced at me, but I did not withdraw the words. Compassion did not require dishonesty. Kendra agreed to cooperate with the investigation, provide her phone for forensic review, and testify about the flower kit, the camera instructions, and the recording. Her attorney would handle any agreement concerning her own liability. I did not call her afterward. I did not coach her, promise protection, or ask her to make her story stronger. The evidence had to survive without my influence. Tessa responded to the new cooperation by sending a third round of legal threats. Her attorney demanded that Nora return every file, that Kendra retract her statement, and that the sponsor prevent unauthorized disclosure of proprietary production methods. The letters described my injury as an unintended consequence of a conventional wedding prank. That phrase became important because it admitted the prank had been planned. My attorney highlighted it, but reminded me not to celebrate. "An admission that there was a prank is not an admission that she knew exactly how the flower was altered," she said. "We have the recording. We have evidence she anticipated a scratch. A prosecutor will still examine who inserted each object, what Tessa understood about the risk, and what Diane knew." I hated how slowly truth became consequence. I wanted one document to settle everything. Instead, each piece answered one question and opened another. Nora proved the confrontation had been written in advance. Kendra proved Tessa expected pain and blood. The hospital proved the object had entered my face. The bakery proved the pins were added after delivery. The hallway video proved Tessa carried the altered flower out. Together, those facts formed something stronger than outrage. They formed a sequence. Miles called me late on a Sunday night. I had not spoken to him since he admitted approving the camera plan. He sounded as though he had not slept. "My attorney said I should not contact you directly," he said. "But your attorney is on the call." A second voice confirmed she was listening. Miles explained that he had begun reviewing the shared business workspace he administered with Tessa. The account belonged to the company, and both of them had full access. He had not opened her private email or personal phone. He found a folder labeled Contingencies. Inside were drafts for possible crises involving employees, sponsors, family members, and their marriage. There was a subfolder with his name. It contained clips from private arguments recorded through home production equipment. Some began before Miles appeared to know the camera was running. Others had been pulled from business meetings and rearranged under titles such as Miles losing control and husband sabotages Tessa's recovery. A written note suggested releasing the material if Miles ever challenged ownership of the company or publicly separated from her. "She planned to make me abusive," he said, "not physically, controlling, threatened by her success, the same framing she used for you." "Did you copy the files?" my attorney asked. "Through the Workspace export tool. My lawyer preserved the access logs and notified the company's counsel." "Do not delete or alter anything," she said. "I won't." Miles became quiet. Then he spoke directly to me. "I helped build the system that did this to you." "Yes." I thought we were shaping stories. You were shaping people. He did not argue. For the first time, I understood why Tessa collected more footage than any project required. The camera was not only her business, it was insurance against abandonment. Everyone close to her existed in two versions: the living person and the edit she could release if that person stopped cooperating. Miles took a breath that broke halfway through. I found the file she planned to use if I ever left her. The sponsor scheduled its compliance conference for the first Monday in November, 7 weeks after the wedding. It was not a trial, a mediation, or the family reconciliation Tessa advertised to everyone who would still take her calls. The meeting existed for one purpose. The sponsor needed to determine whether Tessa's company had violated its contract by manufacturing events, misrepresenting consent, and exposing participants to harm. I agreed to attend only after the conditions were written down. There would be no live stream, no commercial filming, and no private content crew. Avery would not enter the building. Every person in the room would be identified in advance. Phones and recording devices would remain outside, except for the sponsor's official audio system used to create a confidential transcript agreed upon by the attorneys. Most importantly, the short clip involving Avery could be shown only to the compliance representatives and lawyers listed in the limited authorization she and Colin had signed. Tessa's attorney objected to almost every condition. He argued that forbidding her team from filming prevented Tessa from creating an accurate record. My attorney replied that the sponsor was already creating one, and Tessa did not need promotional footage from an investigation into her promotional footage. The objection disappeared from the next draft. The conference took place on the 9th floor of the sponsor's Manhattan office. Frost clung to the edges of the lobby windows, and the city below looked colorless beneath a low November sky. A security employee placed my phone in a numbered locker. I watched him seal the envelope containing it, then followed my attorney into a conference room with 12 gray chairs and a screen covering one wall. The scar on my cheek had faded from red to a narrow pink curve. The numbness near my lip had improved, although cold weather still caused a painful tightening beneath the skin. Tessa arrived wearing a plain navy sweater, minimal makeup, and no visible jewelry except her wedding ring. Diane wore soft gray and carried a leather folder against her chest. Their appearance did not surprise me. 2 days earlier, Kendra's attorney had given my lawyer an affidavit and a copy of authorized behind-the-scenes footage recorded by Tessa's own wedding production team. Everyone in that preparation room had signed releases permitting the content company to film them for wedding material. The clip showed Diane standing in Tessa's kitchen before the conference. "Nothing defensive," Diane said from behind the camera. "You were a bride who trusted professionals." Tessa practiced the sentence twice. It was an accident involving a professionally made cake. "Good," Diane said, and the family consented to filming. Everyone understood the wedding was content. Do not say content, say family documentation. The clip did not reveal what either woman believed. It showed only what they practiced saying and the clothes Diane selected because they made Tessa look less polished and more vulnerable. By the time they entered the conference room, I already knew the performance. Miles arrived separately. He looked thinner than he had at the wedding and sat beside his own lawyer rather than beside Tessa. His wedding ring remained on his hand, but he did not speak to her. The shared workspace export he had preserved included the contingency folder from Part 7, the camera plan, business emails, and drafts describing how both of us could be framed if we challenged Tessa. Before the meeting began, Miles gave the sponsor's lawyers a signed statement acknowledging that he had approved the reaction camera plan and helped develop the description of me as controlling and hostile. "I thought conflict would make the project marketable," he said when the compliance director asked why he approved it. "I did not know about the pins or the video of Avery." I looked across the table at him. "Cooperating now does not erase what you approved." "I know." It was the correct answer. It did not make him heroic. The sponsor's compliance director, Helen Park, opened the conference by explaining that no one in the room would decide criminal guilt. The company would examine its contracts, the accuracy of the representations made to it, and whether it could continue working with Tessa's company. Tessa's lawyer spoke first. He described the wedding as an extensively filmed family celebration in which every adult understood cameras were present. He said the cake contained concealed structural materials introduced by an outside vendor. Tessa had intended a conventional prank and had no reason to expect an injury. Diane confirmed that version. She said Colin had allowed her to manage family documents for years and had verbally approved Avery's participation in a project about grief. Colin sat on the other side of me. He had been quiet since we arrived. I did not authorize her to sign that release, he said. Diane turned toward him. You knew Tessa wanted Avery involved. I knew she mentioned a possible interview. I did not know she had filmed my daughter during a panic attack. You were overwhelmed. That is not permission. Helen Park raised one hand before Diane could answer. The questions that followed were short. Who approved the extra cameras? Miles said he approved the general content plan. Tessa chose the final positions with Kendra and the production coordinator. Who requested that my seat be moved? The venue records named Diane. Who changed the flower cluster after the bakery delivered it? Tessa said she repaired a loose decoration but did not insert any dangerous material. Who completed Colin's release? Diane admitted she had. Who approved the teaser containing Avery? Tessa said the edit had been preliminary and was never formally published. My attorney placed a cached copy of the teaser page on the table, along with its public timestamp and view count. It was available online for 9 days, she said. Tessa leaned toward her lawyer and whispered something I could not hear. The evidence was presented in order. First came the bakery photographs, showing the intact flour in its food-safe pick. Then the hallway footage showing Kendra carrying the emergency floral kit into the preparation room, Diane entering later, and Tessa carrying the altered cluster back out. Then the 3 synchronized wedding angles. The screen showed Tessa moving behind me while I watched the cake cutting. Camera A held my profile. Camera B held Diane, Colin, and Avery. Camera C covered the garden exit. Before Tessa lifted the cake, she looked toward the red light on camera A. She waited until Kendra moved a server out of the frame. Then she pressed the reinforced flower cluster into my face. The synchronized footage continued past the point used in Tessa's public edit. I pushed her away only after her hand had held the decoration against my cheek. Blood appeared when I wiped away the frosting. Tessa did not move toward me. She looked at the nearest operator. The sponsor then played the raw audio from the lavalier microphone Tessa had chosen to wear for behind-the-scenes coverage. Her laugh came through first. Then my voice, "Do not touch me again." After that, Tessa's voice was quieter, directed away from me. "Did you get her face?" No music covered the question. No edit separated it from the blood on my hand. Helen Park stopped the playback. "Tessa, what did you mean?" Tessa's jaw tightened. I was in shock. "You asked whether the camera captured her face. I work in media. I was surrounded by cameras. It was an automatic reaction. Before asking whether your sister needed medical assistance, I did not understand how badly she was hurt." My attorney played Kendra's lawful recording next. "What if it cuts her?" Kendra asked. "A scratch is enough," Tessa answered. "She panics when she sees blood." Diane's recorded voice followed. "Then she does not walk until they do." Tessa pushed back from the table. "This is absurd. Jocelyn always reacts dramatically. Everyone in the family knows that." The room changed. Until that moment, Tessa had maintained that no confrontation had been planned. Now she was explaining why she expected my reaction and why the cameras needed to capture it. Helen Park did not raise her voice. "Are you saying you anticipated that Miss Ward might see blood?" "I anticipated frosting, maybe a tiny scratch. The flour was not supposed to go into her face like that. You pressed it into her face. It was a prank, with a reinforced decoration. I did not know it would break." My attorney opened the production folder. The title, Jocelyn Meltdown Final, appeared on the screen. Tessa stared at Miles. He did not look away. The sponsor reviewed the folder's creation date, the server logs, and the camera instructions. The sample thumbnail showed a woman in a cream dress beside the words, "My jealous sister ruined my wedding." The pitch deck followed. Wedding rupture. Public break. Tessa chooses Grace. The sponsor's own submission record established that those pages had been delivered months before the wedding. Tessa said the deck represented broad storytelling possibilities, not a plan. Helen Park asked why the same camera placement, clothing, public conflict, and exit coverage later appeared at the wedding. Tessa blamed Miles. Miles admitted he helped design the framing but said Tessa controlled the wedding day execution. Diane blamed the production crew. The production logs showed her requesting my seating change. Every explanation moved responsibility to another person, but none explained why all of them had prepared for my reaction before anything happened. The final item was Avery's clip. Before it played, my attorney confirmed the authorization on the record. Colin confirmed that he had signed it. I confirmed that Avery was not present and that no broader permission had been given. Only the approved 30 seconds appeared. Avery sat on the floor, struggling to breathe. "I don't want you filming," she said. Tessa's voice came from behind the phone. "This could help people understand you. Stop. Just give me 30 more seconds." The screen went black. No one spoke immediately. Colin broke the silence. "I did not sign the release." Diane folded her hands. "I completed paperwork because Colin had relied on me to handle family administration for years." "Did he authorize that release?" Helen asked. Diane looked toward her attorney. "I believed I had authority." That was not the question. The sponsor displayed the audit trail, the time Colin was documented at a job site in Albany, and Diane's earlier email admitting that she completed the document without obtaining his approval first. Diane's face hardened. "We were trying to create something that would help Avery financially." Colin turned toward her. She said, "Stop. You do not understand the pressure Tessa was under to deliver usable material." That sentence ended any possibility that the release had been an innocent clerical misunderstanding. Helen Park called a recess. We waited in separate rooms while the sponsor's lawyers conferred. I spent 20 minutes looking at a framed photograph of the Manhattan skyline and resisting the urge to ask my attorney whether we had won. This was not a single contest. The sponsor could suspend Tessa and still settle quietly. Prosecutors could review the same evidence and make different decisions. Civil claims could take months. The public could continue believing whatever version entertained them most. When we returned, Helen read the company's preliminary decision. "Perfectly Imperfect" was suspended effective immediately. No footage could be distributed, edited, licensed, or deleted. All remaining payments were frozen. A formal notice of breach would follow after the legal team completed its contract review. Tessa's management company announced that it was pausing representation pending its own investigation. No one declared a final repayment amount. No one ordered an arrest. No one awarded me damages. But the machine Tessa had built stopped moving. She looked across the table at me. "You did this," she said. "You could have handled it privately, but you wanted to ruin my life." I had imagined that moment many times. In some versions, I delivered a speech explaining every injury she had dismissed since childhood. When it arrived, I needed only one sentence. "I did not destroy your story. I restored the parts you cut out." The conference ended without a reconciliation photograph. Outside the room, our attorneys remained behind to discuss preservation orders and the next stages of the review. I was standing beside the security lockers when my lawyer joined me. She carried 2 separate messages. Diane's attorney had offered to cooperate if the evidence could distinguish her role in the releases and seating plan from Tessa's decisions involving the flower. At almost the same time, Tessa's attorney had offered emails showing that Diane managed participant permissions, selected my clothing, and controlled the family's visual arrangements. Neither offer had been accepted. Neither woman knew exactly what the other had offered. They had entered that room as partners. They left calculating which one of them could survive by sacrificing the other. The first offer to betray Diane came from Tessa's attorney 6 days after the sponsor suspended Perfectly Imperfect. My lawyer called me from her office and made the limits clear before giving me any details. Tessa had not confessed to altering the flower. She had offered documents through counsel in an attempt to separate her decisions from our mother's. The package contained emails Diane had sent during the final week before the wedding. One asked the venue coordinator to move my seat beneath the strongest fixed light. Another instructed the stylist to keep Jocelyn light because dark fabric would hide the visual effect. A third message, sent to Tessa the morning of the wedding, said, "Make sure this looks like something she caused. She always gives us enough if we keep her in the moment." Tessa's lawyer argued that those messages proved Diane controlled the staging and family image, while Tessa trusted her mother to manage logistics. The same package included payment records showing Diane had collected fees for participant coordination, release administration, and access to family members. Tessa was trying to become the daughter shaped by an overbearing mother. My attorney closed the file on her screen. "This does not make her innocent," she said. "It shows what she wants prosecutors and civil counsel to believe." "Does Diane know she gave you these?" "She knows Tessa is cooperating. She may not know every document." 2 days later, Diane's attorney delivered a package of his own. It contained a text message from Tessa, sent the morning of the wedding. "Bring the pearl pins. The sugar flower keeps bending." Diane had replied, "I have the kit. Do not do anything stupid." Another message from Tessa said, "It only needs to hold long enough for the shot." Diane's lawyer claimed his client believed the pins would stabilize the decorative cluster and cause, at worst, a superficial scratch. He described her as a mother trying to prevent Tessa from making reckless choices. The argument might have carried more weight if Diane's own messages had ended there. They did not. She had written, "The cream dress will show everything." Later, she sent, "If Jocelyn tries to leave, keep talking until the cameras have her reaction." Diane also provided the sample thumbnail, the pre-written description of me as jealous, and a copy of Kendra's recording. She said Tessa had designed the confrontation and concealed the true risk from her. Each woman supplied the missing context the other hoped to hide. Tessa proved Diane managed the visual trap. Diane proved Tessa requested the pins and expected the reinforced flower to cut me. Neither could explain the entire plan without implicating herself. By December, the criminal investigation, civil claim, and sponsor dispute were moving on separate tracks. Detective Morales and the district attorney's office continued reviewing the hospital evidence, witness statements, production records, and digital files. My civil attorney documented my medical costs, lost income, legal expenses, and the harm caused by the edited video. The sponsor pursued repayment from Tessa's limited liability company under its own contract. No single meeting controlled all 3 outcomes. That mattered because Diane kept telling relatives that I could drop the charges if I truly wanted peace. I could not dismiss a criminal case that belonged to the state. I could decide whether to settle my civil claims. I could cooperate or refuse to cooperate. I could tell the truth about my injuries. I could not order a prosecutor to ignore evidence. Walter finally stopped calling the investigation, a misunderstanding after he reviewed the family accounts with his own lawyer. He provided statements from the joint home equity line, checking accounts, and credit cards. Diane had legal access to the shared accounts. She had not forged Walter's name or stolen from a private account he could not see. She had concealed what the money was funding. Almost $90,000 had gone toward the wedding, the home studio, production shortages, consultant fees, and payments needed to keep Tessa's company operating before the sponsor approved the final series. Walter had known about $25,000 used for the wedding. He had not known how much additional debt Diane had moved through the shared line of credit. He also found a draft statement stored in a folder she used for financial records. Walter approved all family investments and understood that repayment depended on the successful completion of the series. The statement was false. Walter had signed some withdrawals but had not approved the entire amount or understood how deeply the family's finances depended on Tessa's unfinished project. That did not make him blameless. He had accepted $4,000 a month from Tessa and chosen not to examine the business closely because the money made retirement easier. He had allowed Diane to manage the accounts because confronting her would have required him to admit how dependent they had become. "I spent years not asking questions," he told me during a meeting at my attorney's office. "Then I acted surprised when the answers were bad." "You were not unaware," I said. "You were comfortable." He nodded. It was the first apology from my father that did not contain a request for me to rescue him from the consequence. Tessa had prepared her own protection against Diane. Inside the shared company workspace, Miles found a voice memo recorded weeks before the wedding. Tessa spoke as though testing language for a future interview. "Mom controls the family archive. She handles every permission because everyone trusts her. I have always struggled to say no to her." In another file, Tessa listed documents that could be used if Diane ever claimed the series belonged to the entire family. Diane's management payments, her release work, her instructions to the venue, her control of wardrobe and seating. Tessa had built a file capable of turning our mother into the architect of every violation. Diane had drafted a statement blaming Walter. Tessa had recorded a statement blaming Diane. They had demanded unconditional loyalty from everyone while privately preparing escape routes through one another. Miles moved out of the Armonk house before Thanksgiving. I did not witness it. He sent my attorney a message confirming that he no longer lived with Tessa, and months later he described the move in an affidavit connected to the civil case. He also provided a short video from the company's home production system. Because he had administrative access to the shared equipment, he preserved the original file and its timestamp through his attorney. The video showed Miles carrying 2 suitcases toward the front door. Tessa followed him with a handheld camera. "Say why you're leaving," she demanded. "People deserve to know what you're doing to me." Miles stopped, reached toward the lens, and covered it with his palm. "No," he said. The image went black. That one word mattered because it was the first time I saw anyone refuse Tessa without explaining, defending, or performing a better ending for her. He rented an apartment and began separating personal finances from the company. He did not file for an instant divorce. New York did not transform a broken marriage into a final judgment because someone carried suitcases through a doorway. He lived apart, consulted a lawyer, and waited. By February 2026, discovery in my civil case had begun. My outstanding medical expenses after insurance totaled $8,400. Lost contract income and canceled professional work added another $11,000. My civil legal fees had reached approximately $32,000. Those numbers did not include pain, the scar, the temporary numbness, the damage to my professional reputation, or the months I spent correcting a public lie. Tessa and Diane initially offered a combined payment that would cover my direct losses and part of the legal fees. The offer required me to sign a broad confidentiality agreement, stop helping other relatives challenge old releases, and agree that the wedding injury had been accidental. I rejected it, not because accepting money would have made me less principled. I wanted reimbursement. I wanted them to pay the bills their actions created. I wanted compensation for the income I lost and the injury they caused. I refused the lie attached to the payment. My counterproposal required full payment of my medical costs, lost income, legal fees, and additional damages. It also required the return or verified deletion of footage involving me, an independent audit of the deletion process, and language protecting my right to describe truthful events. Most importantly, it could not interfere with Colin's or Avery's separate rights. The civil mediation took place in April, nearly 7 months after the wedding. A mediator moved between separate rooms. Tessa sat with her lawyer in one. Diane sat with another attorney in a second. I remained with my counsel in a third. The mediator did not decide guilt, probation, criminal charges, or protective orders. Her job was to help us determine whether the civil claims could be resolved without trial. Tessa's position was that Diane had planned the image, controlled the releases, and manipulated her daughter into believing family humiliation was normal. Diane's position was that Tessa had become obsessed with engagement numbers and ignored repeated warnings not to cause real harm. Each woman wanted the money divided according to how much blame she could transfer to the other. At one point, Diane asked the mediator to tell me that a large settlement would leave my parents unable to help Avery with college. I asked whether the same message had been approved by Colin and Avery. It had not. "Then do not use her as currency in this room," I said. Diane later requested that I narrow the data audit because deleting old family footage would be expensive and time-consuming. "That expense exists because they collected material they did not have the right to control," I answered. The mediator returned with another appeal. Diane believed the family could still heal if I stopped describing the system as exploitation. I had spent months studying what Tessa and Diane had saved, edited, sold, and threatened to release. The problem was not one damaged flower or one false signature. The problem was a family culture in which refusal became disloyalty and pain became useful footage. The family was already breaking, I told the mediator. I was simply the last person willing to pretend it wasn't. The final civil agreement required payment of my direct losses, legal fees, and additional compensation. It established procedures for returning or deleting my footage, allowed an independent audit, and preserved my right to state truthful facts. It did not silence Avery. It did not stop Colin from pursuing his own remedies. It did not end the sponsor's clawback claim against Tessa's company. Tessa and Diane divided the payment between them according to a confidential allocation negotiated by their lawyers. By then, confidentiality protected only the amount and payment mechanics. It did not rewrite what happened. The criminal case remained separate. At the end of April, the district attorney notified my attorney that prosecutors had reached a plea framework with Tessa. The agreement still required review and approval by a judge at a hearing in May. Diane had not received an instant criminal sentence for the release. Her civil liability and financial consequences were already real, while the review of her document-related conduct continued. No one walked out of mediation in handcuffs. No judge appeared to punish the family on my schedule. Justice arrived through documents, hearings, losses, restrictions, and decisions that accumulated until the life Tessa had built could no longer support her. After the mediation, Tessa's attorney asked permission to transmit one personal question through counsel. Would I ever give her another chance? I did not answer immediately. Months earlier, I might have written 3 pages explaining what she needed to admit and how much she had taken from me. Instead, I sent one sentence through my attorney. Change first, then live with the fact that I may still choose not to open the door. By then, Tessa and Diane had already opened every file they possessed against each other. Neither had enough left to protect the other. By June 2026, 9 months had passed since Tessa pressed the reinforced sugar flour into my face. The injury had healed before the story surrounding it did. Under ordinary light, the scar looked like a thin, pale curve along my left cheek. When I stood near a window or beneath the angled lamp in my bathroom, it turned pink and slightly raised. Cold weather still made the skin tighten near the corner of my mouth, but the numbness was gone. My smile moved normally again. For months, I had feared that every person who looked at me was studying the scar. Eventually, I realized most people noticed it for only a second. They saw a mark. I was the one who remembered the frosting in my eyes, the taste of metal, and Tessa asking the camera operator whether he had captured my face. My clinic completed its internal review shortly after the sponsor conference. The management team examined the raw wedding footage, the hospital documentation, the police report, and the statements from the venue. Once the unedited recordings showed that I had pushed Tessa away only after she forced the decoration into my face, the clinic restored my full schedule. The director sent a factual correction to the parents who had contacted the practice. It stated that I had been the injured party in a private incident and that the clinic had found no professional misconduct. There was no public ceremony. No one gathered the staff together to apologize. The parents who had demanded that I be removed from their children's treatment did not all return. One mother sent me an email saying she had judged too quickly. Another transferred her child permanently and never explained why. Several strangers deleted the comments they had posted beneath Tessa's edited video. Most simply moved on to another scandal without acknowledging what they had helped spread. The truth repaired my employment record. It could not collect every lie after people had carried it away. I returned to direct patient care once my doctor cleared me. At first, several younger patients stared at the healing cut. One boy asked whether I had fought a tiger. I told him the truth in a form appropriate for his age. Someone hurt me, and a doctor helped me heal. Did you win? He asked. I made sure it stopped. That answer stayed with me. For years, I had thought winning meant making the person who hurt me admit everything in front of everyone. After the wedding, winning became simpler and harder. It meant protecting evidence when my family wanted it erased. It meant accepting help without surrendering control. It meant refusing to turn Avery's pain into ammunition, even when doing so would have made strangers believe me sooner. The civil settlement reimbursed the medical costs that remained after insurance, the income I lost from private sessions and workshops, and a substantial part of my legal fees. It also included additional compensation for the injury and the damage caused by the edited public video. I accepted the money. I did not refuse it to prove that I was morally superior. Tessa and Diane had created expenses that would never have existed without their choices. Paying those expenses was part of accountability. The settlement did not make me rich, and it did not transform pain into profit. It restored money I had spent defending myself against something they had deliberately built. The criminal proceeding involving Tessa reached court in May. The district attorney had reviewed the hospital evidence, the bakery photographs, the venue access records, Kendra's recording, the production plans, the raw wedding footage, and the messages between Tessa and Diane. The evidence supported that Tessa intended to cause pain, produce visible blood, and provoke a reaction for the cameras. It did not prove that she intended the pins to enter as deeply as they did, or that she had planned permanent damage to my face. Tessa had no prior felony record. Her lawyer negotiated a plea agreement with the district attorney. The agreement still required a judge to review it, hear from both sides, and decide whether the proposed sentence was appropriate. The hearing took place in a courtroom that looked smaller than I expected. There were no dramatic television cameras, no crowd of influencers, and no relatives gasping as hidden evidence appeared on a screen. The documents had already been reviewed. The arguments had already been written. What remained was the official acknowledgement that the incident was not a harmless wedding misunderstanding. Tessa sat at the defense table wearing a dark blue dress. Her hair was tied back, and she wore almost no makeup. She had once used that appearance to signal vulnerability in front of sponsors. In court, it no longer controlled the room. Diane sat several rows behind her. They had arrived separately. They did not speak or look at each other. The plea required Tessa to accept responsibility for intentionally creating the physical confrontation that caused my injuries. The sentence included probation, restitution, mandatory counseling, limits on her use and possession of disputed family footage, and compliance with a final order of protection. The order prohibited direct and indirect contact with me except through approved legal channels for necessary court or settlement matters. She could not call me. She could not send messages through Walter, Colin, Miles, friends, employees, or relatives. She could not appear at my apartment, workplace, or professional events. She could not create content referring to me in a way that invited others to contact or intimidate me. Most importantly, she could not manufacture a final reconciliation scene and claim that my absence was another act of cruelty. Before sentencing, I gave a victim impact statement. I had rewritten it 6 times. The first version sounded like a closing argument. The second tried to explain our entire childhood. The third listed every moment when Tessa had humiliated someone and Diane had demanded that the victim laugh. My attorney reminded me that I did not need to prove the entire history of my family in one courtroom. I needed to explain how the offense affected me. When I stood, the scar on my cheek felt tighter than it had that morning. I described the 6 stitches, the nerve irritation, the follow-up appointments, and the fear that the injury had damaged my eye. I described waking at night because turning my head pulled at the wound. I described the lost work, the parent complaints, and the strangers who accused me of faking blood after seeing a video that began only after I defended myself. Then I described the part that mattered most. My sister did not lose control for 1 second, I said. She created a situation in which my fear, my pain, and my anger would become usable footage. She believed that calling it content made my lack of consent irrelevant. Tessa looked down at her hands. I am not asking this court to repair my family, I continued. A court cannot do that. I am asking the court to recognize that this was not a joke that accidentally became serious. The possibility of pain was part of the plan. My reaction was the product she intended to capture. I did not ask the judge to imprison Tessa for as long as possible. I did not ask for mercy either. The sentence was not mine to design. That distinction had become important to me. Tessa and Diane had spent years assuming they had the right to control everyone's role and every outcome. I did not need to become another person who believed justice was legitimate only when it followed my preferred script. When the judge approved the plea and imposed the sentence, Tessa nodded without looking toward me. She left through a separate exit because of the protective order. There was no final confrontation in the courthouse hallway. I did not need one. The sponsor terminated perfectly imperfect after completing its compliance investigation. Tessa's company had received a $225,000 advance tied to the development and delivery of the series. Some of that money had gone toward production costs. Some had helped pay for the wedding. Some had supported the house, staff, consultants, and the monthly payments my parents had come to depend on. The sponsor demanded repayment of the portion associated with episodes that had not been delivered or had been developed using inaccurate consent representations. Tessa's management company ended its agreement with her. Several brands paused or canceled campaigns after their lawyers reviewed the compliance findings. Vendors who had extended credit based on the expected series income began demanding payment. Tessa did not disappear from the internet. She still had followers. She posted general messages about surviving betrayal, rebuilding after public humiliation, and learning which people stayed when success faded. The protective order and settlement terms prevented her from naming me, showing my image, or using our family's disputed footage. Without access to real relatives whose pain she could shape into episodes, her content became vague. She spoke about healing without explaining what had happened. She hinted at enemies without being allowed to direct her followers toward them. Engagement fell. The audience that claimed to love her honesty had mostly loved the steady supply of private conflict. The house in Armonk was listed in May. Tessa and Miles had purchased it for approximately $980,000 with a small down payment and a large mortgage. They had treated the expected series income as though it had already become permanent wealth. It had not. Between the mortgage, sponsor repayment, production debt, attorney's fees, the civil settlement, and the cost of maintaining separate households after Miles moved out, keeping the property no longer made financial sense. The sale had not closed when I finished telling the story. After the mortgage balance, commissions, taxes, and outstanding obligations were paid, neither Tessa nor Miles expected a large profit. Miles had lived apart from Tessa for more than 6 months before filing for a no-fault divorce in May. Their marriage did not end the night he carried 2 suitcases through the front door. He rented an apartment, separated personal accounts, consulted counsel, and spent months untangling his finances from the company. The divorce was still pending. Their attorneys were disputing responsibility for business debt, production equipment, the house, and contracts signed during the marriage. Miles argued that certain expenses resulted from Tessa's unauthorized conduct. Tessa argued that he had approved the business strategy that created them. Both claims contained part of the truth. Miles cooperated with the sponsor and investigators. He preserved shared workspace files, acknowledged his role in the camera plan, and admitted helping construct my image as the controlling older sister. That cooperation mattered. It did not turn him into a hero. He had approved reaction cameras because he believed authentic distress made valuable content. He had helped describe me as hostile without asking whether the description was fair. He only fully confronted the system after discovering that Tessa had created a contingency folder to use against him too. Before the protective order limited communication, he sent an apology through our attorneys. "I thought shaping a narrative was different from harming a person," he wrote. "My response became part of the civil record. It was different only because someone else absorbed the harm." Diane's consequences unfolded differently. She did not receive Tessa's criminal sentence. Her completion of Colin's release, management of permissions, financial involvement, and role in staging the wedding were reviewed separately. She carried significant civil and financial responsibility. Her management payments ended as soon as the sponsor froze Tessa's company. She contributed to the settlement and became involved in the sponsor's repayment dispute, according to her role in participant access and release administration. The money that had allowed her to present herself as the family's generous organizer disappeared. Colin revoked every authority Diane once claimed over Avery's school, medical, financial, and media matters. He notified Avery's school, doctors, counselor, and other relevant contacts that only he could approve documents for his daughter. Diane was no longer allowed to be alone with Avery. That was not a custody order imposed against a grandparent. It was Colin's decision as Avery's legal father. He told Diane that supervised contact might continue only if she respected Avery's privacy, stopped questioning her about legal matters, and stopped treating access to her granddaughter as a reward for years of practical help. Diane called the conditions cruel. She said Colin had forgotten who raised Avery while he worked. Colin did not argue about the past. He told her that helping a child did not create ownership over that child's future. Then he kept the boundary. Walter moved out of the Ossining house and rented a modest apartment nearby. He retained a financial lawyer, separated accounts held solely in his name, and consulted a matrimonial attorney. He had not filed for divorce by June. 40 years of marriage did not dissolve neatly because a hidden file and a series of bank statements exposed how Diane had used family money. Walter still communicated with her about the house, debts, taxes, and legal obligations. The difference was that he no longer allowed her to answer for him. He admitted that he had known enough to ask questions and had chosen not to because the monthly payments from Tessa made retirement more comfortable. I spent years telling myself I was staying out of the conflict, he told me. What I was really doing was accepting the benefits. I did not tell him that admitting it repaired everything. It did not. He asked Colin before contacting Avery. He accepted supervised visits in public places. He stopped asking me to persuade anyone to forgive him. That was not redemption. It was the first evidence that he understood forgiveness could not be requested like a favor. Colin changed in quieter ways. He attended Avery's school meetings himself. He managed therapy appointments, read every release before signing it, and stopped forwarding administrative messages to Diane without opening them. When his work schedule created problems, he asked for help while keeping responsibility. One evening in March, he came to my apartment after dropping Avery at a friend's house. I kept asking you to absorb things because you were better at surviving them, he said. I called it peace because that sounded better than admitting I was afraid. I set 2 cups of tea on the table. You were surviving too. That doesn't excuse what I asked you to do. No. He looked down at his cup. I'm sorry I wanted you to call the assault an accident because I was scared Mom would stop helping us. I'm sorry I treated your injury like another family problem you should quietly manage. I'm sorry I used being right as permission to speak to you like you were failing Avery in every possible way. You were right about the danger. I was wrong about what being right allowed me to do. Neither apology erased what happened. That was why they mattered. Avery chose not to watch the complete panic attack recording. Her attorney reviewed the file and confirmed its contents. The sponsor's compliance team saw only the short excerpt Avery had specifically authorized. The remaining copies became subject to the deletion, return, and legal retention procedures established through the agreements. An independent digital specialist verified which files had been deleted from commercial and personal storage, which copies had to remain preserved temporarily because of legal proceedings, and who could access them. Avery said she did not need to watch herself frightened in order to prove that she had been frightened. At school, she joined a digital citizenship project about consent and online media. She helped create guidelines explaining that permission to record one moment was not automatic permission to publish it, edit it, sell it, or use it for a different purpose. She relied on public studies, hypothetical examples, and general guidance. She did not identify herself as the girl in Tessa's footage. Her experience shaped her work without becoming the product. Before the final protective order took effect, a counseling report noted that Tessa wanted to apologize to me. Her attorney asked whether my lawyer could transmit a request for future contact. I declined. Once the order took effect, no apology arrived through Walter, Diane, Colin, Miles, employees, mutual friends, hidden accounts, flowers, or letters. For the first time, my refusal was treated as a complete answer. I did not know whether counseling would change Tessa. I hoped it might, but I no longer believed hope created an obligation to wait. Change would be her responsibility. Access would remain my decision. The final scene of this story did not happen in court or inside the sponsor's office. It happened on a warm Friday evening in June at the small dining table in my White Plains apartment. Colin brought takeout from Avery's favorite Thai restaurant. Avery complained that he had ordered the noodles too spicy, then ate most of them. We talked about her final exams, my patience, and the terrible apartment Colin had viewed closer to his job. No one discussed restoring the Ward family. No one asked what lesson would look best in a video. After dinner, Avery looked toward the window. The sunset had softened the room, and the 3 of us were sitting close enough to fit into one frame. We should take a picture, she said. Colin reached for his phone, then stopped. Avery noticed. I asked her, "Do you want a picture? Or do you think this is the kind of moment people are supposed to photograph?" She considered the question. "I want one." I looked at Colin. "Do you?" "Yes." "So do I." Colin placed the phone against a stack of books and turned on the timer. There was no ring light. No one told me where to sit or asked Avery to look more emotional. We did not rehearse our smiles. We did not repeat the picture because the scar on my cheek reflected the evening light. The phone flashed once. When we looked at the image, Avery had one eye half closed. Colin was leaning too far forward. My hair had fallen across one shoulder, and the scar was visible. "It's not perfect," Colin said. Avery smiled. "That's why I like it." We saved one copy to each of our phones. I did not post it. I did not add a caption about healing. I did not send it to Diane as proof that we could still be a family without her controlling the moment. Colin placed the phone face down on the table, and we returned to our dinner. Not every memory needed to be hidden or deleted. What had to change was who had the right to create it, who could keep it, and who decided what it meant. For the first time in my family, the camera did not choose the story. We did. When your pain is dismissed as a joke, you do not have to laugh just to keep the peace. Protect yourself by documenting what happened, saving messages, seeking medical help, and speaking to trustworthy professionals instead of arguing with people determined to rewrite the truth. Boundaries are not cruelty, and forgiveness should never be exchanged for silence. You can accept compensation, demand accountability, and still refuse to become as exploitative as those who hurt you. Most importantly, respect other people's consent, even when their story could help your case. Subscribe to the channel for stories about courage, justice, and rebuilding.